This conference will now be recorded.
Yeah. Okay, let's get started now. That's awesome. Yeah, so still people are joining, so we'll get started with the session so they can able to join on the way. Okay, so what an awesome day. And I would like to thank everyone for making your time for this session on machine learning operations specialization course demo. So here we are, here we're going to learn what is really MLOps and what is this particular program, I mean the course called machine learning operations specialization program. So we are here to understand that. Okay, so this session is going to be for next 2 hours. Okay, so make your time accordingly. So it's going to be for next 2 hours. So it's going to be a lot of fun. We're going to learn a lot of different things. We're going to understand what's ML ops in a high level, and we're going to understand how it's going to add impact. I mean, the positive impact on your careers. Okay, let's get started without wasting much of your time. Okay, let's get started now. Okay, so yeah, so before we getting started, okay, so before we getting started with the session, so first I would like to understand my audience, obviously, right? So I can able to set a threshold accordingly by knowing you guys in better way, so I can able to deliver the content accordingly. So go ahead, use your chat window, mention who you are. Are you a data scientist? Are you a data engineer? Are you a student? Go ahead and mention it in the chat window. Let me know, and let us others also know what kind of audience that we have today. So I can able to set a threshold accordingly, so I can able to deliver a content for you. Okay, here we go. The first response from Rahul, he mentions a data scientist. Go ahead, guys. Mention who you are. Are you a data scientist? Are you a student? Are you a working professional? What kind of a work that you do? Are you a data analyst? Are you a data engineer? Are you an ML engineer? Go ahead and mention that in the chat window. Go ahead. So here we go. Like we are getting a lot of messages in the chat window. Deepak says yeah, he's a data engineer, and we have yeah. So then we have Vivek, he says data engineer. Again, so we have Althoff, he says data engineer, and John, he says AI, ML, and robotics engineer. That's awesome. Kumar Chandra says he's a data engineer. Srinivas says he's a DevOps person. Abhishek says he's a machine learning intern. That's awesome. So Swami says he's a okay, so data engineer. Pradeep, we have Pradeep here, who is a data scientist. Krish, we have ML engineer here. We have students from computer science background. That's awesome. That's awesome. So I could able to see like we have a lot of people from various different aspects where you are part of building ML projects. You might be a data engineer, you might be a data scientist, you might be an ML engineer, you might be a DevOps person. That's awesome. So we have the wonderful audience today. It's going to be really fun. Let's get started. So first of all, who you guys are talking to, right? A quick introduction. So this is okay. Let me just try to quickly switch on my camera so you can able to check out. Okay, so this is Sharad Kumar from Cyton Technology. I'm a CEO and founder of this company. So what we do, right? So basically we are into two phases. We do provide corporate trainings, and we help, let's say, people's like you, like maybe a retail training it might be. So I have personally trained more than 5,000 plus people. I mean, just imagine anything that you want to say in terms of ML and AI on top of cloud platforms like AWS, Azure, or GCP, MLOps. So we are the best peoples. Okay, so more about us later. So we will get started with the session today, and we will have a lot of fun. Okay, let's get started. So what are the highlights of this particular demo session? Okay, so I'm just going to turn off my camera, otherwise you will be having my camera feed towards the left side, so it might be a bit interrupted. So I will just going to switch off my camera, so you can able to enjoy the much screen space right now. Okay, so these are the three important highlights of this particular session. So we're going to learn what's really MLOps is, and what it takes to master MLOps, and what does a job industry looks like for MLOps, and what kind of a salary range it offers, what exactly industry offers, first of all, for you guys. Okay, let's get started. So before we getting started, there are another three important reasons why you should complete this session end to end. As I mentioned, this session is going to be for 2 hours. Three important reasons why you should not leave this session in between. Okay, the first thing is, today you definitely going to learn something really new that's really going to impact, I mean, positive impact on your career. Okay, and the second important thing, I'm going to provide the live demo. I mean, I have built the complete MLOps pipeline, what we used to call, on top of a cloud platform. I'm going to show you the live demo of what it takes to build a successful ML model. Okay. And the third important stuff is you can download the free ebooks, from this cloud providers like GCP, maybe AWS. So you can able to download this particular premium ebooks completely for free if you stay till end of the session. Okay. These are the three important things. Okay. So now we will get started with this session right now. Let's get started. What is MLOps and what it takes to master MLOps? How does the job opportunities looks by the peoples who is going to be part of MLOps? Okay, let's get started. So what are the session that we do? Like we will be getting started with displaying this beautiful picture. Okay, so what are the session that we conduct? Okay, I want you guys to observe this picture, as simple as that. Okay, here is a task for you guys to get started. I want you guys to observe this particular picture for the next 10 seconds. That's it. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions. You can able to describe that in a chat window. Okay, go ahead and observe this picture for the next 10 seconds. Go ahead. Yep. Okay, so obviously there is nothing much that we're going to observe here. So we have known these things, right? So okay, go ahead. Here is a question. So what do you think this picture is about? Okay, just go ahead and describe that in a chat window. What do you find in this picture? What you can able to capture from this picture? So what do you find? Describe this picture. Go and try to describe what is this object that you can able to figure out from this picture. Here we go. So we have Amit who says, okay, dog walkers having fun. That's awesome. That's good. So Mukesh is saying, I see a lot of white dogs. Okay, that's good. So then we have Mayank says dog, human, trees, right? Uday provides a beautiful description. People are sitting in a park and relaxing and enjoying with dogs. What an awesome description, Uday. That's awesome. Okay, that's good. Okay, but that's not the question that I would like to ask you folks. Okay, that's not the question that I would like to ask. My question is this: how do you know this is a picture of a park? And otherwise, how do you know this is a picture of a dog? And how do you know this is a picture of a man? And how do you know this is a picture of a woman? And how do you describe there are different breeds of dogs here, right? There is a different breeds of dogs, right? There is a one breed here and another breed here, and I can see a place where I can walk, and I can see a lot of trees and a lot of grass, and I can see people are sitting in a park, right? My question is that how do you know this is a picture of a park? Who taught you that this is a picture of a park, or maybe this is a picture of a dog, right? How do you know this, first of all, right? So Bharat says we are aware about those, right? So and here we have Altov says we have learned from our kid, right? That's awesome. That's a good description. But let's try to relate this with whatever we call today as data science, machine learning, or maybe artificial intelligence. Okay, for a few seconds. Okay, so we are a biological missions, aren't we? So we are a biological missions, right? So we are, just consider that. Now I want you guys to display the same picture to the newborn baby. Okay, I want to display this picture to the newborn baby, which is less than 1 year old, for example. Can a baby describe the same stuff what you guys have described right now? Can a baby describe, this is a picture of a park, and this is a picture of a woman, and this is a picture of a dog, and the dog which is carrying a ball in his mouth? No, right? Bharat says no, obviously, right? Why? Because the baby haven't started learning things, right? So we are the best examples of machine learning and data science and AI, whatever we call, right? So let's consider that. So now let's consider the baby grows, right? Now let's say he will be start learning how to walk and how to talk out and recognize the peoples, isn't it? So he obviously, parents are the best teachers, right? The parents started teaching a lot of different stuff, right? When the baby grows, then he will go for a primary school, maybe high school, where he will be started learning physics, mathematics, science. Then he will get a degree, right? And then he will be started working for a corporate, right? So that's so what it takes, right, over here. So, and again, so based on what we have learned, we could able to make our own decisions for the future, right? You can able to frame, I mean, you can able to sculpture your future accordingly. I mean, the best example would be something that you're doing right now, right? So you believed you want to attend this particular program. I mean, you need to attend this MLOps specialization course demo. You decided to provide your valuable 2 hours with me, believing that you're going to learn something really awesome that's going to provide you some positive impacts on your career. So you could able to decide what's going to happen in the future. You could able to I mean, design your future accordingly, right? So we are the biological missions. The same stuff what human beings are trying to do today, the way that we learn the data, that way we could able to make a predictions for future to understand what's going to happen in the future. We want to replicate the same exact things. We want to teach the same exact stuff to these dumb machines, as simple as that. Okay, so now let's try to understand in the perspective of these machines. So way we have learned the data, the way we have progressed, and way we could able to make a predictions to the future. For example, we want to do the same exact step. So for example, let's take a quick example, then we will try to understand. Okay, so now let's try to pick up some data, right? So the data would be, what kind of a data it is. Let's consider it's a CSV file, right? It may be the Word document, it may be the text file, whatever it is. Let's say here I have a CSV file. Okay, what is this data? First of all, okay, this is a data where I have a 30,000 data points. What do you mean by 30,000 data points? What is this data is about? Okay, this is a data that represents an electricity consumption of your home. It may be your office, for example. Okay, so let's say I collected the amount of electricity that your electronic appliances in your home consumes. Like, let's say I have all the data saying that what's your washing machine, what's your water geyser, it may be or any other different electronic appliances that you have in your home. What does that electricity consumption looks like? I collected all the data, right? So let's say here I have some 3 years of data. I collected the data for the last 3 years. Okay, now I have the last 3 years data sitting in the CSV file. My goal is pretty much simple. I want to teach this data to this machine, and then I'm going to ask this machine to make some predictions. Let's say it may be the forecast saying that what will be my electricity bill that I'm going to pay for the next 6 months. What will be the electricity bill I'm going to pay for the first month, it may be the second month, blah blah blah, to the 6 months. Okay, so what will be the electricity bill that I'm going to pay for the next 6 months, right? Isn't it awesome? Just imagine a machine can able to predict what will be your electricity cost for the next 6 months, so you can able to optimize your cost accordingly, right? You can cut down, you can switch off the lights, so you can get the very less bill, right? That's awesome, right? So that's what exactly machine learning, what we are talking about, right? So pretty much simple. So here we have a data set, right? Maybe let's say I have a different features in it. So let's say I have a voltage, the current consumption of a previous history, then I have a bill amounts. So I have different kind of columns. I mean, when we call it as features, for example. So let's say a machine tries to understand the various different patterns from your data, understanding how does your electricity consumption looks like. So then once it understands the different kinds of patterns, it produces something called ML model. So machine learning model, basically that's going to be an output of this machine. So then a machine uses that particular model to predict a future, for example, something like this, right? Otherwise, let us try to put it in a different way. Let's say you have a bunch of pictures of your cat. Let's say you have a bunch of pictures of a dog. Let's say I have pictures of a cat, and let's say I have pictures of a dog. So now I want to teach my machine the difference between a cat and a dog. Okay, so now I'm going to teach this data to my machine. So once my machine has learned all the data, let's say I put up a camera. Let's say I put up a camera in front of my machine. So then I'm going to ask my machine to predict what's the kind of an animal that you can able to find in front of a camera. So then my machine is going to say, I predicted there is a cat standing in front of a camera. It may be the dog that is standing in front of a camera. So what is this? This is what we call it as computer vision, isn't it? So anything that you want to do with images and videos, for example, right? The best example would be your face recognition systems that you have in your phone. I mean, every smartphone today, right, has something called a face recognition system, right? So where it can able to predict it can able to predict your face, and it can able to unlock your face, right? So that's a beautiful example. And again, that's again a quick validation saying that we are in an age of AI, right? So we are currently using at least 1 or 2 applications every day in our life, right? So the one best example, as I mentioned, it may be your face recognition systems that you have in your phone. It may be, let's say, for example, a Google Voice Assistants, or maybe Amazon Alexa, what we can say, it may be Apple Siri, for example. Otherwise, we can say a Chat GPT, right? So everyone is aware about Chat GPT, correct? Isn't it? So yeah, we are in an age of ML and AI, isn't it? Yeah, that's awesome. So now let's try to understand what it takes to build the successful ML model. So what it takes to build the successful ML model. Okay, here is the typical workflow of creating a machine learning model. Okay, so consider, right? So let's go to the human beings. So the way we consume data in many different patterns, isn't it? We consume data through our eyes. I mean, we visually consume data. We consume data through our ears, through audio. We consume data through a sense, right? By touching something like that, right? So obviously, so we consume data in many different patterns. Similarly, a machine can able to consume a data in many different types. For example, your data can be a pictures, right? It can be a JPEG, for example. It can be a CSV file, as we talked. It may be a JSON documents. It can be a simple text files, for example, right? So once we have a data, right, then we will be getting started with something called data preparation. Okay, what is this data preparation? So data preparation is something like a cooking that we do, right? What we do in the kitchen, right? Let's say if you're trying to cook something, how do we get started? We bring some vegetables, we will start cleaning that vegetables, we remove unnecessary stuff. I mean, we remove all the garbages, and that's how we will be getting ready, right? Same example. I mean, the data preparation is the same process. A real-time data from the industry comes with a lot of different garbages. We remove all these garbages. We'll be having some missing data, outliers, blah, 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 other stuff. So we make sure we prepare that and we transform that if it is necessary. Okay. In the next step, so this is where we're going to use an IDEs, right? This is where we write some code, right? So let's say we might use something like Jupyter Notebooks, it may be VS Code, or whatever the friendly IDE that you want to use, right? So this is where we write a code. So what is this code will be there? So this is the code where we say what kind of a machine that I'm going to use to train my data on. So then what kind of a machine that I'm going to use to test my data on. So all those stuff, right? This is where we write. So once we pick the right kind of a machine to train our data on, so then let's say we start running that code. So this is where once we have a machine that we have picked, then here to this particular machine, we start feeding all the data that has been prepared. So this machine, once it has learned, then it will produce something called an ML model, as I described already. And then we will be having something called test data in order to test this particular machine to validate whether this machine is really fit to be deployed to a production or not. So once you tested with your test data set, if your results are really perfect and if you're really impressed with that results, so then we will take this ML model, then we will be registering to something called model registry. Okay, we'll talk about that one in detail later. So let's say a model registry might have more than one versions of a model, maybe not one, you might have 10, for example. So then what you're going to do, then you will be moving on to do something called deployment step. This is where you're going to pick the best version of a model with greater accuracy. Then you're going to pick this model and you're going to deploy that to the production ready environment. So once your model is deployed, then comes your developers, for example, who are going to integrate everything and they're going to design a beautiful web applications. It may be Android applications. I mean, basically they create a client side applications where your client can come and utilize this particular model. So for example, as a client, I can able to generate a forecast saying what will be my electricity bill forecast in the next 6 months, for example, right? That's all exactly machine learning is all about, right? But is this the only thing what it takes to build ML model? So not exactly, but there are a lot of different complexities that has been involved in that. But we definitely understand what is exactly ML is, right? So it's basically a study of an algorithm and mathematical model that your computer system progressively improve their specific task on, right? Otherwise, it's all about, we teach complex mathematical models to our machines. So once a machines can able to understand the complex mathematical models, then we can able to ask this machine to make some predictions out of it. It can able to predict what's the future, right? So we use various different programming languages. It may be the Python, it may be R, it may be JavaScript, it may be C++, even that's possible today, right, to get started. So, but now let's get into the serious stuff. What is MLOps anyway? What is MLOps? So why MLOps is really important? Why MLOps is the only thing that we need to rely on to make any organization successful tomorrow. So I mean, to make their ML models more productive tomorrow. So that's what exactly what we're going to talk about in MLOps. So before we understand what is exactly MLOps, otherwise machine learning operations, we need to understand what's the current state of machine learning in world today. I mean, we need to understand how does a machine learning or maybe data science or AI, what we're talking about, how does it progress right now? What's the current state in the world right now? Let's get started with that. Here we go. So now, in order to understand the current state of a machine learning, we need to do time travel. So we need to do time travel for the last decade. Okay, let's get started from the last decade, for example. So last decade, let's consider last 10 years ago. So last 10 years ago, every startups or maybe every organizations at that particular time, so they have a lot of data sitting in their organization doing nothing, but they want to do something out of it. They want to generate some values out of it. So they started hiring a lot of data engineers. They started hiring a lot of data scientists to come up with a value addition thing on top of this data. So that's where they started building an ML models. Okay. So at that particular scenario, so it's all the focus is completely on building an ML model. Right, operationalizing that ML model to production is after though. I mean, The target is not to productionizing it. So all they want to build an ML model, as simple as that. And today, if we consider that, today in 2023, and again, this data, what I'm showing, it's not random data that we got. So it's actually from AWS AI Conclave from 2023 Bangalore in India. And let's try to understand what's happening today. Today, only 53% of organizations, they are transforming from, let's say, from their POC into production. They're moving from proof of concepts to production. Average, it takes an average of 9 months to come to this particular level. But what happens with the remaining organizations? Around 47 to 30% of organizations, they are not getting into production for the multiple reasons. They might not have a solid ML pipelines to deliver their ML model robust for the next, maybe for the few years into production, for example, right? So what's going to happen in 2024, right? It's expected 75% of organizations will shift from piloting to operationalizing their AI. What do you mean by operationalizing their AI? So they have spent a lot of time building this ML model, making a good, accurate ML model, but they haven't made any revenues out of it. They haven't made any, they haven't generated any value to their customers. So the value generation is going to get started from year of 2023. So what does that mean? What does that mean for you guys? Okay, that's what exactly we're going to learn. So now let's try to understand what is MLOps. Okay, so what is MLOps? Machine learning operations. Okay, so a machine learning operation is basically a practice that's a collaboration between the multiple stakeholders who are part of building ML model. So what do you mean by the stakeholders who are part of ML model? So I know that data scientist is the only person who is responsible for that. If you think that, no, it's wrong. It's completely wrong. Data scientist is not the only person who is going to build the end-to-end ML model here. So there are different stakeholders that comes into the picture. Basically, the collaboration and communication between them, it's basically what we call it as MLOps. Okay, so for example, there are data engineers, there are data scientists, there are ML engineers, there are operations. Otherwise, in few organizations, we call it as DevOps team, developers. There are many different stakeholders who is responsible for doing different stuff over here as part of building ML model, right? So applying this MLOps practices could able to increase the quality, it could able to simplify the management process of your organization. And it's here when we talk about MLOps, basically what we're talking about automation. So building an automation for deployment of your machine learning models, it might be deep learning models, it might be to the large scale production environment. Okay, so now let's try to understand in a high level. Let's try to get into the high level view of MLOps. So MLOps motivation and high level. Okay, so MLOps, as we're talking about, it's a discipline that sits intersection between the various domains of machine learning. For example, as I mentioned, it may be machine learning, it may be DevOps, it may be data engineering. The combination of this, we can say MLOps, for example. Okay, that's where the different stakeholders come to the picture. So MLOps is not just for data scientists or someone who's called ML engineer. So it's also for a data engineers, it's also for data scientists, ML engineers, or maybe the DevOps persons who is going to be part of building ML pipelines. Okay, so let's say intersection of this practice is what we are talking. So those things comes together really drives value in how we build, deliver, and manage your ML models. So as a discipline, what we are talking about, it enables the core set of practices that spans by, let's say, maybe people or maybe process or maybe technology. Okay, so that's how it goes. So now let's try to understand, okay, what's the challenge? What's the challenge? Why it is so much complex, right, when it comes to MLOps? Okay, let's try to understand that. So the MLOps challenges. Okay, let's get into a quick story, right? In the process of, let's say, creating and managing machine learning workflows, we run into a lot of different challenges that we understand that, let's say, the common steps where we've been involved in most of the time, let's say data preparation, model training, and model deployment, right? That's the stuff, right? So not only we have these steps actually, but there are really a lot of things we have to stitch together to make things work smoothly in our pipelines. Okay, let's try to understand each and every aspect here. So what are the challenges that we might, so what are the challenges that we might undergo? So what we do literally in a data preparation, let's get started. So in the part of data preparation step, you might contain, let's say, one to many tasks, maybe taking your raw data set and eventually transforming that into training data set, transforming that into testing, evaluation data sets, for example, right? So let's say when it comes to model training step, so you might have some additional steps inside your model training. So for example, whether you are doing single model training or you might be running a multiple different experiments using, let's say, hyperparameter optimization techniques. I mean, multiple experiments that you're running inside, right? So otherwise, let's say when it comes to model deployment step, you might have only one step in a workflow. Otherwise, it could have, let's say, many tasks underneath it. So for example, it could be a deployment to a staging environment. Otherwise, you want to create another stage for production environment. So what I'm talking about, what is this staging or maybe the production that I'm talking about? Let's say, for example, if I want to deploy my, let's say the new feature of my new version of an ML model, I don't want to directly deploy to the production environment without understanding its the work or how it works and how whether it's perfect or not. So that's where I created two different environments. So maybe I can call it a stage. Otherwise, let's say I will call it as dev environment. Otherwise, I will also mention a production environment. So a dev environment exactly resembles the production environment. So I want to deploy my model to dev. I want to test it manually, and I'm going to see how it works. If I'm satisfied, then I'm going to deploy to the production environment. So that's how it works. Otherwise, even though like you have multiple environments here, you need to have a different controls over there. So maybe you want to have a control saying that a manual approval, for example. So MP, for example, manual approval, for example. What do you mean by manual approval? So let's say I'm releasing a new version of an ML model. I don't want to directly deploy it to the dev or prod without any permissions. Maybe, let's say as a data scientist, maybe a junior data scientist, whoever you are, so you won't be having a sufficient permission directly deployed to the production. Maybe someone in your hierarchy, in your organizations want to come manually approve your model saying that, okay, after testing it, if it really works good, so then you will giving a green signal, okay, saying that, okay, now I'm going to approve this model to be deployed to the production. Okay, that's how it works. So what I'm trying to say, there are a lot of different steps being involved here. So a lot of different dependencies has to work together to ultimately build this and build out something that provides, let's say, an iteration across a life cycle of ML models that we are building, and also to provide, let's say, end-to-end traceability, right? So you need to track each and every aspect of you building an ML model. What's happening in your data preparation step? What's happening in your model training? What's happening in your model deployment step? You need to track each and every aspect of it. Okay, so the end-to-end traceability to track the model that you have trained. Let's say you want to deploy your model to production, or whether you want to deploy to the dev. So all this stuff, all the steps what I'm talking about is going to be really complicated and challenging. So that's where using the right tool sets in MLOps makes organizations' lives easier. Okay, so now let's try to discuss more. Okay, so and one more relative term that comes into the picture. Whenever we call MLOps, there's another term. Few people might be confused between that. Is this DevOps or MLOps? Are they same? No, they are not exactly same. Okay, let's talk about that one. Let's try to understand the MLOps challenges similar to DevOps. Okay, obviously we have DevOps people here. Let's try to understand DevOps. Basically, DevOps is it's maintaining a software development lifecycle. Let's say we are building a e-commerce website that you're trying. Let's try to understand the challenges over there. Okay, so the challenges. Hello. Okay, so now you should be able to hear me. Okay. Okay. Okay, I'm sorry about that. Okay, maybe I've been muted for a few seconds. Okay, sorry. Okay, so please confirm if you can able to hear me. You can just tell me as in a chat window. They will get started again. Thank you so much.
Yes,
That's awesome. Awesome. That's great. Okay, thank you so much for acknowledging. Okay, let's get started now. So now we are talking about the MLOps challenges similar to DevOps. Okay, so now, as I mentioned, the traditional DevOps tools are already part of MLOps, but this traditional DevOps tools are not comes ready to use on top of MLOps actually, right? So let's say, for example, the lot of times what I'm talking about, the CI/CD tools, as I mentioned, it's not exactly built for MLOps. Maybe, for example, you might need some customization. For example, you need some custom built tools, for example, for data preparation. You need custom built tools for model training. You need some custom built tools for model deployment, for example, right? So all of these things, what we are talking about, is really complicated and challenging. We have to stitch these things together. I mean, let's say when we have a data preparation step, a data preparation step has to talk to model training step, a model training step has to talk to model deployment step. Okay, but there is no golden pipeline that you can able to follow actually. So what do you mean by this golden pipeline that you cannot follow? So I mean, let's say if I can able to draft a template for you. Okay, so you cannot, I mean, not every organizations can able to use the same exact template that I'm going to draft right now, for example. So because there are multiple reasons comes into the picture. For example, the requirement for the technical implementation of your organization would be different. Your organization structure would be different. The tools you might need to integrate might vary, right? So, and what is so much common would be the steps and the core concepts that I'm going to recommend, probably what we're going to discuss in this program, and maybe in MLOps specialization program, it's going to be exactly same. Okay, so now saying that, let's get started. So now, before that, so we have to understand that, so because let's say there are different set of tools that is required for multiple aspects. For example, you might need tools for source and version control. You need not just you need, so source and version control is all about, let's say you have a, as a data engineer, as a data scientist, you'll be writing a lot of code, right? So you need to version that code. So we use tools like GitHub, for example, to version that code. So then we need to also track and version your data, isn't it? So let me just provide a beautiful story here, so where you can able to understand. Okay, let's imagine that we will go to 2019. Okay, let's say as a data scientist and a data engineer, let's say you guys are together, let's say you built a ML model for a theater owners. I mean, to theater owners to predict what will be their sales forecast. I mean, what will be their ticket sales forecast, how much revenue they're going to make. Okay, let's try to imagine that you didn't implement any MLOps tool set or maybe anything. Let's say you believe that building an ML model is going to bring a success, but yes, obviously when you build an ML model, it's definitely going to work fine for a couple of months. So let's say believing that, let's say you deployed your ML model, it did work for 6 months, but after 6 months your model become useless. Why? Right? Because the COVID comes into the picture. You know what happens once the COVID comes into the picture? So if everyone went to lockdown, no one went to theaters, for example, right? So the reason is, let's say even during a COVID, you can see the OTTs completely took over the market, right? So what do you mean by that? So I mean, we people started spending a lot of time on OTTs like Amazon Prime, it may be Netflix, or maybe Disney, for example, right? So, and again, even after the COVID, you can able to see the customer behaviors got been completely changed. I mean, so let's say we are not spending a lot of times in theaters right now because we know we have OTTs, we can able to watch our movies in your home peacefully, right? So, and again, maybe still people are still, obviously they are going for theaters, maybe not for all the random movies, maybe for your favorite actor, for example, right? So what I'm trying to point out here, pretty much simple. So I mean, let's say the customer behavior before COVID is different and customer behavior after COVID is completely different, right? So what do you mean by that? Your customer is data. That means you have two versions of data. So do you have a tools to version your data? Because whenever your data changes, your model changes. I mean, let's say you have two versions of data. That means you're going to have two versions of your ML model. So where are you going to store your model artifacts? How are you going to version your model and model artifacts, for example? Let's say, for example, to version your data, there are different varieties of tools that you can able to get started. For example, there is a tool called DVC, or maybe Git large files that you can able to use to get started. So to store, I mean, to version your models, we use something called model registry. Okay, that's what exactly we're going to talk about in detail. Let's get started now talking about what it takes to master MLOps, first of all. Right? What it takes to master MLOps. Let's get started. Now, let's try to understand the MLOps components in detail. Okay. See what are the tool sets? I mean, what are the structure? What does the structure looks like? Let's say when you're trying to build your MLOps pipelines? What are the components that has been part of it? Okay, let's get started. So the way it gets started, obviously, let's say we'll be getting started with a business understanding, isn't it? So this is where, let's say, people from your business, a business analyst or whoever it is, they'll be sitting together to try to understand the use case, right? So they will be trying to understand or identify the use case. Once the right use case has been identified, I mean, here we are talking about transforming the problem, let's say the business problem into the viable problem statement that you could able to solve, right? So let's say once you have figured out the use case, then comes the data understanding your data. First of all, you have a right access to the data or not. Do you have the right data that you could be able to collect? You can able to build data pipelines to bring in and organize your data, transform it if it is possible, right? So then comes a feasibility study, right? So once the feasibility of this project has been studied, so then we'll be getting started with the data preparation step. So once you have a data, this is where, let's say, our data engineers, they comes into the picture, they started preparing a data, transforming if it is necessary, right? So then comes learning about an algorithm. So once now you have the best data, so now you need to understand what kind of an algorithm that I need to use to solve this particular problem. So once you figured out the right algorithm to get started, so then you'll be start building your ML model and training it, and then comes model experimentation. So you'll be conducting various different experimentation, maybe hyperparameter tuning jobs, blah blah blah, in order to produce the best quality of an ML model, obviously, right? So once you have an ML model ready, then we will be evaluating our ML model. So this is where we will be generating a lot of metrics out of data that we have tested on. So we might calculate let's say precision, recall, FN score, RMSE, blah, 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 all the metrics that you know, right? So then once you evaluated your ML model, if you're really satisfied, then we'll be planning about model serving, right? So once you have planned for model serving, then let's say we might deploy your ML model to production ready environments. Then we build this automation that I'm talking about. So what is this automation that I'm talking about, right? As a data scientist, as a data engineer, for example, you don't want to, let's say, run your code manually again and again in your Jupyter notebooks, for example, to train your ML model, right? Let's say you want to produce a new version of your ML model. You don't want to get started with again running your Python codes on top of a Jupyter notebooks. That's not exactly automation what we're talking about, right? So the automation is nothing but what we're calling incorporated CI/CD pipelines. So here, let's say you keep on monitor, let's say you build this particular operations and to monitor your ML models that you're deployed in a production ready environment. Let's say this model monitoring tools keeps on monitoring the quality of your model, not just a quality of a model. Let's say the complete infrastructure that you have built has to be monitored. Let's say whenever there is a drift is being identified in your ML model, this ML model monitoring tools will send a signal to your automation, I mean to your CI/CD pipelines, where a pipeline will start executing automatically again. So it will start preparing your data automatically. It will start training your ML model automatically. It will start registering your ML model to model registry automatically, and it will start deploying your models automatically. This is the automation that we're talking about. So now let's try to dive deep a bit of information here. So like, how do we get started, right? So let's say first, as I mentioned, we'll be getting started with a use case discovery. Who are the stakeholders, for example, who will be involved in the process of use case discovery? It may be, let's say, peoples between business analysts, for example, data scientists. So these are the peoples who will be defining a business problem, and we want to translate that into viable problem statement. So once you have a right problem statement, the first thing that we need to provide is objectives, right? So objectives to be solved by this ML with the associated KPIs that you want to measure, the key performance indicators, right? So once we have this, then comes our data engineers. They will be collaborating with our data scientists to acquire a data. This is where, let's say, they will be building a data engineering pipelines to accumulate data from various different sources, right? And then the next process would be they will be getting started with preparing a data and maybe transforming a data if necessary, for example. Saying that, the next step would be, let's say, machine learning pipelines. Okay, so this is the stage where we will be designing and deploying, let's say, the pipelines integrated with a CI/CD pipelines. Let's say once we have our pipelines ready, this is where our data scientists will use pipelines for doing multiple experimentations and testings, right, to train a model and produce the best quality of a model. So then we need to ensure that the kind of a pipeline that you're going to build, let's say, you need to keep on monitor, I mean, to check if there is any data and model lineage and with the associated KPIs across the experiments that you're going to build, actually, right? So saying that, then comes production deployment process. Like now, once you have the best quality of your ML model, then we'll be starting thinking about deploying your ML models in a secure and seamless infrastructure that you're going to deploy. Maybe you want to deploy it on top of a public cloud. Maybe you want to deploy it on top of on-premises, or maybe hybrid cloud that you want to get started. So once you have deployed your ML model, then comes a very important step. This is where we need to integrate model monitoring tools in order to monitor your model and also the infrastructure that you have built so far. I mean, the complete CI/CD pipeline, right? And these models will be continuously, let's say, monitored based on the configured KPIs, like ensuring if there is no, I mean, if there is any changes in your, let's say, input data distribution, or maybe changes in your model performance. Okay, so those are the key components that you need to have in your pipeline when you're getting started. Okay, now we will move on to the very important slide, understanding how does this core components, the core components of a pipeline looks like. Okay, let's get started. Now, this is the very important slide which provides a more clarity for you. So talking about automated ML pipelines versus CI/CD pipelines, the ultimate goal for any organization has to move from building automated ML workflows to incorporated CI/CD pipelines. So that will be the goal. Okay, saying that, so now we will get started. So now what do we do in let's say automated ML workflow? Automated ML workflow is let's say exclusive of anything that we talk about MLOps here. Okay, so here let's say initially we'll be having a data, then we'll be doing a data preparation, then we will be building an ML model, I mean training your ML model, then we'll be deploying your ML model. That's all we do, right? Where does your MLOps comes to the picture? There is no MLOps over there in building automated ML workflows. So that's why an industries want to move from building automated ML workflows to incorporated CI/CD pipelines. Okay, so now let's get started. So where do we get started? Obviously, we will be getting started with ML project identification. Again, we don't want to get started with that. So because we know how industry comes with their problems they can able to solve. So let's say an industry has figured out the right problem to solve. Then comes data. Let's say they have accumulated the data from various different data pipelines they have built. Maybe they have their in-house data repository to get started. So now, as I mentioned, once you have a data, consider that the use case that we discussed. Let's say you have built a ML model for predicting the sales forecast for the theaters, for example. Consider that your customer behavior has been changed. That means you have two versions of your data. So where are you going to store your data? I mean, how are you going to version your data, right? So obviously, as we are talking about source version control, we cannot store our data in GitHub. Can we store our data in a GitHub? No, GitHub is not meant for that. So that's why we use data version control tools. For example, we call it as DVC, for example, right? Data version control. Otherwise, there are tools like Git large files, for example, we can able to get started with, right? So we're going to integrate data version control tools along with our pipelines, okay? Then comes data pre-processing step. Okay, so data pre-processing step. So this is where, let's say, our data engineers comes into the picture, where we'll be writing a lot of script, maybe to prepare your data or maybe transform your data, right? So again, as a data engineer writes a lot of different code here, and this code also to be versioned, right? So this is where the code repositories comes into the picture. So what do you mean by code repositories? For example, GitHub, for example, right? So we're going to use tools like GitHub or maybe any tool on top of a cloud platform that it supports. So this is where we'll be starting versioning our code. Okay, so once you have your code has been versioned, then comes, let's say, our model building step. As a model building step, this is where, let's say, our data scientist will be writing a lot of different script to train your ML model, right? So again, this code has to be also versioned. So again, this code will be stored in a code repositories. Okay, so as the part of model building, let's say the next step we'll talk about model training. So let's say if you want to get started with a model training, you need to have the right version of a data that you need to get started and the right features that you need to use to get started. As I mentioned, what is this features? Let's say I want to train my ML model to predict electricity bill forecast. Let's say voltage, current, or maybe the previous bill amounts would be the features what I'm talking about. Okay, so these are the three important features, for example. Okay, so this is where our feature stores comes to the picture. What is this feature store? A feature store, for example, putting in a very simplest form, a feature store is nothing but the schema repository that representing all the features that you have, right? So a feature store can able to help you to query the right amount of features, I mean the data through your storage platforms to get started with your actual model training process. So Once we have a feature store, then we get a data. This is where, let's say, we'll be getting started with the model training. So then comes model artifacts. So model artifacts is the final output of your ML model training process. This is where you have your metadata of your model, and this is where you have your ML models. Okay, so now you have your ML model. So where are you going to store this ML model? Are we going to put it in a GitHub? No, GitHub is not meant for that, as I mentioned. So we're going to figure out the right tool that you need to use to version your ML models. This is where your model registry comes into the picture. So model registry, again, it's a repository which is actually designed to version your model. Okay, so now let's say you have a 10 versions of your ML model stored in your model registry. Then comes a deployment step. So now through your deployment step, you're going to get the best version of a model from a model registry, and you're going to deploy that in a production ready environment. Then we create all the integration and operations. So I mean, connecting everything with the CI/CD pipelines. Along with that, we'll be having a multiple feedback loops that you can able to use. So what is this feedback loops? For example, we call it as quality gates, or otherwise automated quality gates. So what is this quality gates? So this quality gates helps you decide whether is the right model, is this the right fit model that I can able to deploy to the production or not. So for example, I could able to use my metrics to decide. For example, let's say I train my model on top of regression, for example, right? Let's say I have a metrics. For example, I have MSC score, right? The mean square error. So I'm going to check if my mean square error value is less than or equal to 7. Then I'm going to deploy my model to production ready environment. If it is not, let's say if it is greater than 7, it won't register my model to model registry at all, for example. So this is what exactly quality gates are. So quality gates can able to decide whether it's a right model to deploy or not, register my model to model registry. And you can also have your quality gates on data preparation side. So you can able to use data checkpoints basically to ensure whether your data has been prepared properly, to ensure there is no outliers and other aspects you can able to check. And saying that, having end-to-end traceability to track each and every stuff, what's happening in your data pre-processing step, what's happening in your model training step, what's happening in your deployment step, and post-deployment, what's happening in your model monitoring step, ensuring that it's really important. Collecting a logs and generating reports really adds benefit for any organization. Okay, that's awesome, right? This slides provides more benefits. Okay, then who is going to do what here? Okay, you talked about data version control, code repositories, feature stores, model registry. Who is going to do what? Okay, let's try to understand the different roles involved in MLOps actually right now. Okay, saying that, so now we understand, here we are here to understand what it takes to build the successful ML model, right? So developing, let's say, the successful machine learning projects involves varieties of experiences and requires extreme collaboration among teams actually. So you need to, let's say, we need to answer a few questions. Any organization has to answer a few questions before they're getting started. First of all, they have to figure out, do they need to build ML model? Is this a right problem statement that I could able to solve through ML, right? Then do they have an access to the data? First of all, without having any data, it doesn't make for any organizations to talk about ML, right? So then talking about, let's say, to design the system and the infrastructure that is required, the system and infrastructure that is required for you to get started, right? So let's say you need to have a right features. Even once you have the right data, you need to figure out the best data to get started, right? And more importantly, you need to figure out, do you have, let's say, the enough resources? Do you have enough resources to get started with this ML project in the first time? Okay, saying that, so before we getting started, a quick validation. I can see like few people saying I can't hear. A quick validation in case if you guys can able to hear me, if my audio is clear enough, in case if my screen is clear enough, please tell me as in a chat window. We will move on to the next interesting stuff. Go ahead and tell me as in a chat window. That's awesome. Thank you so much for confirming. Folks, please check if you're facing any network issues. Yeah, if your screen is not visible, okay, that's awesome. So no issues. So if my screen is not visible, just try to refresh your screen and rejoin the meeting. It should be visible. I mean, maybe due to your network connectivity, it might have disconnected the screen. Try to refresh your screen and leave the meeting and rejoin. It will work perfectly. Okay. Okay. Saying that, let's get started. So as I mentioned, first an organization has to decide, do they have enough manpower to get started with this particular session actually, right? I mean, so to get started with a ML project in the first time, right? So let's consider the perspective of MNCs here, right? A multinational company. So what are the different roles who are actually part of MLOps here? Let's get started with the data analyst first here. So what is exactly our data analyst does, right? They will be working closely with, let's say, product managers and business team. So ultimate goal for our data analyst to drive insights from the user data, from your client data. So this data analyst will be using a tools like, it may be Excel sheets, SQL, it may be the different range of visualization tools like Tableau, it may be Power BI, basically to generate insights out of your data, right? So then comes data engineers. So our data engineers will be responsible for, let's say, building an infrastructure to collect let's say, and transformer if it is necessary to pre-process your data. So our data engineers will use tools like, it may be Spark, it may be Hadoop based tools, and maybe ETL tools, basically for extract, transform, and load jobs, right? Those are the things. So then comes our data scientist. Okay, so what does our data scientist does? Obviously, they will be building an ML model, which will become a part of the final end product, right? So then comes our research and maybe applied scientist. Okay, this role pretty much would be new for you, right? So I mean, so you don't find this particular role everywhere, but let's say the companies that is working on a bleeding edge technologies, for example, it may be Google, for example, Microsoft, right, or Amazon. So is working on a bleeding edge technologies. Basically, these people would be responsible for, let's say, building a new algorithm for various different kinds of projects that they are working on, for example. So then comes machine learning engineers. Okay, so basically our machine learning engineers work will be overlapped with data engineers, and the major phase of their work, they will be majorly focusing on, let's say, ML model and related infrastructure. So they will be working closely with data scientists and to deploy their models to production ready environment. So basically, when it comes to, let's say, MLOps, so we call them as ML engineers. Otherwise, let's say we don't call it as DevOps on top of ML here, but we call them as ML engineers, for example. Okay, so then comes our final piece of a puzzle would be let's say developers, for example. So the last piece of a puzzle. So what does our developers does? Obviously, so they will be integrating everything with the main application. They create this beautiful web apps, Android applications, where it drives the value to customer at the end of the day, right? So let's try to compare a quick difference between, let's say, what is exactly MLOps and DevOps. So now saying that, so as part of a DevOps, as I'm talking about, it's majorly focusing on, let's say, software development lifecycle. It's not about machine learning model development lifecycle. So let's say in DevOps, let's say all we worry about building a generic application. It may be a web app, Android app, for example, right? So here we'll be using a standard set of libraries, right, on a specific use case that you want to solve. So all we care here, it may be the version controls, what are the things that will be involved, will be tracking changes on the codes and the artifacts only, right? So the artifacts would be executable jar files, and the kind of validations that we do, for example, it may be unit test, and the different roles of people who would be involved here, it may be software engineers and obviously DevOps engineers, for example. And when it comes to MLOps, as I mentioned, it's all about model development lifecycle. So here we'll be building a model to feed inferences. I mean, we build model to generate predictions otherwise. So here, when it comes to ML, machine learning, what we are talking about, so here we will be using a broad scope of tools, languages, and libraries, right? Just imagine the amount of libraries that we use here. And again, here, when it comes to MLOps, we have a requirement of various different tools. We need a tool for data versioning. We need a tools for model artifacts versioning, model registries, source code versioning, right? And our artifacts would be the serialization files mostly, and let's say our validation would be the validation that you do on a model metrics, for example, model performance, right? And the roles, I didn't specify all the roles. For example, I just specified data scientists and ML engineers. Data engineers are part of it, as I mentioned, operations team, blah, 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 other things. Okay, so now let's get into the stuff talking about different tools for MLOps. Okay, so what are the different tools that are available in the market? Let's say if you are a professional that you're going to pick a tool for your organization, that you want to work on a tool for your organization, what are the things that we need to keep in mind? The first thing would be open source versus closed source. Yes, there are wide varieties of tools. You can able to go for tools on top of a cloud platform. Otherwise, you can come up with your own open source. I mean, you can pick the open source tools. So we understand that open source tools are, they are free, right? Obviously, and the only complexity is when you're using open source tools, integration, these tools with your MLOps pipelines would be the only difficulties. this will be the only reason when you have a very few developers. I mean, we have very few developers to work. That will be the only difficulties. Then comes platform versus specific tools. What do you mean by platform versus specific tools? You can able to go for the private tools. There are different players in the market. You can able to go for a subscription based system. You pay a subscription and they got everything that you need. So then comes model and production environment monitoring. Let's say if you're designing a pipeline, the one important thing that you need to look forward is model and production monitoring tool set. So do they provide, let's say, model and environmental monitoring tools to ensure the production bug are documented and addressed in the meantime? So then comes understanding, let's say, security and compliance is concerned in terms of the pipeline that you're building. So very important stuff is model templating and cataloging. Let's say as a person that you're working in an organization on a specific project, let's say your organization, they're not going to build only one ML project. They might build, let's say, multiple ML projects, maybe hundreds of projects for the different clients tomorrow, right? So you don't want to reinvent your wheel again and again. Let's say you have one template that you've built and you have cataloged it, and you can able to use the same template for the next 100 projects. You can replicate it again and again. So you're going to use on a minimum changes, you can able to use the same template again and again. So then comes model training, tuning, and drift management. This is what I'm talking about, automation. So do that pipeline offers an automation. So whenever there is a drift has been identified, your pipeline has to start automatically. Does this offer automated data preparation, automated model training, automated model deployment, right? Those automation has to happen without you manually intervening and running a code automatically, right? So then comes pipeline management. So here we are talking about various different steps, right? So your data preparation step, model training step, a model deployment step, model monitoring step. So does your pipeline management tools offers let's say triggering support, and whether it offers logging, triggering, for example, sending a notification in a meantime saying once your data preparation is over, once your model training is over, right? Those kind of things. And the last most important thing would be the collaboration and communication capabilities. I mean, whether that particular pipeline that you're building, does it offers a way you to document your commands, questions from your team, right? And let's say other notes and on particular models that you're building. So does it offers integration of other communication tools, like does it offers integration of a Slack, Trello, for example, right? Something like that. Saying that, now we will get started with MLOps on top of a cloud. Okay, as I mentioned, so MLOps specialization program, MLOps specialization course, here we are not just going to talk about one single cloud platform or maybe one open source tool. So this program covers all the three different cloud platforms. We do cover AWS, Azure, and GCP, and even more. For that reason, if you want to know more, still we have one more hour to go. As I mentioned, three important steps. Okay, so very important insights that you're going to gain from this particular program. The second, you can enjoy a live demo, and you can able to download the free ebooks only if you stay till the end of the session. Okay, so let's get started. So first of all, why the cloud is very important. Okay, here we're going to talk about, in this particular course, we're going to talk about three different cloud platforms. I mean, AWS, Azure, and GCP. We know that they are the majority of stakeholders in a cloud industry. Most of the machine learning happens in these three cloud platforms. As I mentioned, in our course, we'll be covering three different cloud platforms, AWS, Azure, and GCP. And obviously, it's not enough, right? Industry always asks for more. Yes, we do also cover open source tool sets. Okay, saying that, so now let me just provide you a glimpse of tools that we're going to learn in this particular program. Let's get started with the Git based tools for source and version control. So it may be the tools that we're trying to understand. It may be GitHub, or maybe AWS has something called AWS Code Commit, or Google has something called Google Code Repositories, or maybe Azure Cloud has something called Azure Repositories. So, but at the end of the day, so let's say there is no different rocket science that we're learning here. I mean, we're going to understand how Git works. So what are the Git repository that you're talking about? GitHub, Bitbucket, or maybe any cloud-based platforms? It works with Git based commands. So if you learn once, you could able to apply the same commands, the same workflow to any different cloud, any different cloud-based repositories actually. So then comes understanding and learning CI/CD tools on top of cloud. So we understand what is CI/CD, right? It's all about maintaining a software development lifecycle. So I would like to provide you a quick example in a layman terms where you can able to understand how this CI/CD works. Okay, CI/CD is all about automation, for example, and putting it in a very simplest fashion. Okay, let's say you guys have built a e-commerce website, for example. Let's say you guys have built an e-commerce website where you have a pay button in a green color. let's say once people are buying something from your website, you have a button in a green color. Okay, so now from past 3 months, you receiving a lot of complaints just saying that I didn't like that green color. I hate green color, for example. Just consider that that's a very simple, silly reason, but yeah. So let's say customers are complaining saying that they didn't like the green color. So what does our developer does? So now our developer is changing the button from green to red as per the customer feedback. So now he is writing this code and he is pushing this code to the code repository, for example, GitHub. Okay, that's it. That's all it does. Remaining stuff, it will be completely taken care by our CI/CD tools. So once our developer has pushed the code to our code repository, for example, GitHub, so then our CI/CD tools, for example, code pipelines on top of AWS, for example, it tries to recognize as there is a changes that has been made by our developer, and it automatically starts building that particular application. It starts building that application, and then it will generate artifacts. Then it will start taking steps to deploy this particular application. Let's say as part of web application, here we are talking about deploying our application to web server. So again, as I mentioned, I want to deploy my app to dev and production environment because I don't want to have only one environment. So what I will do initially, I will deploy my application to dev, and I'm going to come and check whether my button has turned to red from green. Okay, once your developer is satisfied, let's say your development team is satisfied with your dev environment, in the next step, I'm going to deploy the same exact feature to production environment also. So that's how it works. So everything is completely taken care by our CI/CD tools. Only thing, let's say I might have a manual approval process where I'm manually coming and clicking a button to deploy to the production, or maybe for deployment. Saying that, now let's try to understand our MLOps. How does our MLOps pipelines actually work? Same process. Let's say I have our developer, let's say I have my developer sitting and writing a code. He will be pushing a code to a code repository, for example. So let's say once he has pushed the code, our code MLOps pipeline understands that our data engineer or maybe data scientist has made some changes to the code. Then automated pre-processing step kicks in. I mean, you don't manually click here to pre-process your data. Everything happens automatically. So this is where our feature engineering step comes to the picture. Once your feature engineering done, then comes our model training step. We train a model, we produce our ML model. Once you have produced your ML model, then comes model evaluation step. This is where we evaluate your ML model. This is where we calculate all the metrics, for example, MSE score, RMSE, blah, blah, blah. Then comes our quality gate, otherwise a condition step. This is what I'm talking about, an automated quality gate, which decides whether you need to register this model to model registry or not. This is where I'm going to check whether my MSE score is less than or equal to 7. If it is less than or equal to 7, it's going to register my model to model registry. Otherwise, it's not going to register my model to model registry. So let's say once I have my model into my model registry, then comes, let's say, our build tools. This is where, let's say, I will be calling my build tools. Let's say you want to build your ML model into Docker image. Let's say I build my ML model into Docker image. Let's say then once I have my Docker image, let's say I want to deploy my model to model hosting environment. Again, same process. I want to deploy my model to dev. Then once I deploy it, I'm going to check it whether it works as expected. It's generating a predictions as expected. And if you're satisfied with the results, the next process, you're going to deploy that same exact model to the production ready environment. Again, the manual approval process comes to the picture. And again, you're going to plug in your model monitoring tools, which keeps on monitoring your ML model based on your inferences. Okay, saying that, so there are different varieties of CI/CD tools that you can able to use on various different cloud platforms. For example, AWS has something called AWS Code Pipelines, right? And AWS Code Pipelines is integrated with AWS Code Commit. It may be AWS Code Build, for example, or maybe AWS Code Deploy. When it comes to Azure, Azure has Azure DevOps. Azure DevOps is integration with Azure Pipelines, Azure Artifacts, Azure Repos, Azure Boards. These are the tools. All the tools that I'm going to show here, we're going to learn in our course actually. Okay. So then comes GCP based tools. GCP has the tools like AWS, GCP Code Build, GCP Code Repository, Artifacts, Cloud Run, and Cloud Deploy. Okay. And obviously, saying this, and this is all not enough for any organization to get started. So maybe What if I want to use open source tools? Maybe what if I want to deploy it on top of containers? What if I want to deploy my ML models on top of Kubernetes? Yes, we do cover Kubernetes. So this is where Docker and Kubernetes comes in the picture. Let's say how you containerize your models and how you deploy your ML models on a Kubernetes environment. Otherwise, how you deploy your ML models on a Kubernetes environment on top of a cloud platforms. It may be Amazon Elastic Kubernetes service. It may be Azure-based Azure Kubernetes service. How do you deploy? Then comes model management tools. This is where you're going to understand how you can able to use open source model management tools. Why do you use open source when you have a cloud? You might have a question. Maybe what if your organization want to cut down their cost? Open source is always free. They want to cut down their cost. What if you want to use MLflow on top of your data centers, and you want to use MLflow for model experimentation and for model registry? Right, you can save a lot of money. There are a lot of organizations, they do use MLflow, and using DVC for data versioning, using Git large files for data versioning. Then comes feature stores. So what kind of a feature store that your organization is going to use, whether you're going to use a SageMaker based feature store or Vertex AI based feature store, or feature store something a private based feature store where you can pay subscriptions like HubSpot. Otherwise, do you want to use open source completely free feature stores like Feast, which is very famous, right? So, or maybe you want to use Tecton or maybe the feature store on top of Databricks. Otherwise, you want to create your own feature store by using DynamoDB or maybe S3. Then comes cloud ML services. This is where we actually train our ML model. This is where we use our virtual machines on top of these platforms to train ML model. So trying to understand how can I be able to use SageMaker Studio to build end-to-end MLOps pipeline, using Vertex AI to build end-to-end MLOps pipeline, using Azure ML Studio, Machine Learning Studio to build end-to-end MLOps pipeline. Otherwise, not interested in using cloud-based platforms, you feel a lot of, it's organizations getting a lot of bills, maybe get started with MLflow, which is open source platform that runs on top of Kubernetes. Using Kubeflow, you can able to build end-to-end ML pipelines. Then comes model monitoring tools. Obviously, so post deployment comes into the picture. So monitoring your ML models is essential for any organizations to get succeeded. So understanding various different model monitoring tools on top of various different cloud platforms. Otherwise, again, trying to understand using platforms like Evidently AI, which is completely open source, free tools to monitor your ML model. Obviously, then comes auto ML tools. Maybe let's say if an organization want to get started with a subscription-based platform for some scenario, maybe if you want to produce, let's say, a quick POC. Otherwise, you don't want to set up the complete pipeline by yourself, considering you don't have a lot of manpower. So, there are various scenarios when an organization chooses the auto ML tools like Isgo Azure, Domino Data Labs, Olahai, Neptune.ai, weights and biases. For example, you can able to pay a subscription for these organizations, and you can able to, they got everything that you need to build pipeline, virtual machines, everything, Jupyter notebooks, whatever you want, and all you need to do, pay a subscription, for example. Then comes post deployment challenges. Okay, everything is perfect now, I have deployed my model. What are the challenges that you face right now? So there are challenges related to software engineering, right? Considering, okay, the amount of traffic that comes into the picture, understanding the load balancing, for example. Then comes understanding the challenges related to ML related, trying to understand tools to, let's say, identify data drift, like concept drift, for example, such kind of things, and understanding the challenges when you're deploying your models on the edge devices like IoT devices. Okay, so these are a quick insight. What is this course is all about? Okay, so now let's get into the serious stuff. Why don't we have a quick demo, right? I have already built a pipeline on top of AWS. I'm going to show you. So now the actual interesting stuff starts. Don't leave this meeting. So there's a lot of stuff that you can able to learn. Okay, let's get started. So now let me go to my AWS, and here we go. Okay. So here you can able to see a SageMaker Studio. So where I have built an end-to-end model building, training, and deployment pipeline. Okay, so here is the project that I built. So the project name is Demo Session 2, and here you can able to see the repositories that I have. So this is where, as I mentioned, let's say this is where our data engineer, it may be data scientist or maybe ML engineer, make some changes. They push the changes to the repository, right? It comes over here, right? So let's get started. Saying that, let's say this is where I have a repository. I have one repository for model building and I have another repository for model deployment. All the changes will be pushed here. So once I have my code, let's consider that once I push the code, then comes our pipeline. So this is where I have my actual pipeline. So if I go inside that pipeline, you can able to see that my pipeline has been executed successfully. So let's say if your pipeline is executing twice, thrice, for example, you should able to see multiple logs over here. So let's say if your pipeline has run tries, you're going to have a 3 different models. Okay, so I have one time, I have my pipeline executed one time, I might have one ML model. Let's try to review it. Okay, this is the pipeline that I actually built for this particular use case. And again, this is the use case where I'm actually building an ML model to predict an age of an abalone. If you don't know what is this abalone, you can just quickly Google it. It's kind of a seafood. It's basically a sea snail, which is actually where I'm using it to predict what will be the age of an abalone. So it's basically, I mean, based on an age of an abalone in a market, the price difference actually changes. Okay, so here I have built a pipeline to predict an age of an abalone, and these are the steps that I have. Okay, so the first step is pre-processing an abalone data. Okay, so now let me get inside. So now, as the part of pre-processing our abalone data, all we're going to have in our output, so what do we have? So we're going to split our data into testing, validation, and training data set. And I stored all my data into my cloud storage, for example, S3, which is a cloud storage platform. So all I do in pre-processing, split the data into training, testing, and validation. So then once I have my data ready, what else that I do? I will be getting started with a training abalone model step. This is where my actual model is being trained. As an output of my model training, you could able to see the output metrics. That is, I have generated my RMSE score on training and RMSE score and validation. Then comes my output model. This is where I will be producing my ML model, which is model.tar.gz file. This is my model that is generated on top of SageMaker Studio, and I have it on top of Amazon S3. Then comes model evaluation step. So as part of a model evaluation step, this is where we evaluate and generate metrics that I'm going to use it later. So this is where I calculate, let's say MSE score, for example, maybe I calculate standard deviation or maybe any metrics that you need. And I stored my evaluated metrics in storage platform. So then comes quality gate. This is what I'm talking about. Check MSE abalone evaluation. This is what I'm talking about, a quality gate, which actually decides, is this a right model to be registered under a model registry? So here I have written a condition saying that if my MSE score, as we discussed, if my MSE score is less than or equal to 7, then it's going to register my model to model registry. Otherwise, it won't register my model to model registry. So you can able to see an output of check MSE abalone evaluation is true. That means it is actually registering my model to model registry. So once I go to my abalone model registry, you could able to see the metrics, that is MSE score of my model is 4.91, which is actually less than or equal to 7. So, and here I have my one model that is appeared here. So now let us get started. Now let me show you how I'm going to deploy this model to, let's say, my dev or maybe staging environment, otherwise to production environment. So now I have my model and I want to go to experiments. So here is the experiments where you can able to check all the different kinds of experiments that I conducted. There are 3 experiments that you could able to notice. I mean, experiments are all the pre-processing jobs that you have done. So maybe there is a pre-processing job that is done for splitting a data to train, validation, and testing. Then evaluation, for model evaluation, there is a job, and there is a model training job. Those are the 3 experiments that I've conducted. So now let me go to model group. This is what I'm talking about, model registry. So this is where I will be having my ML model. And let's say I have one group. If I go inside that, and here we go. Here we have one version of ML model, and you can see the version number and the stage is none and the status is pending. That means it's actually waiting for me to approve this model. Let's just go and approve this model. So now if I go inside, you can see the event type is approval. The status says pending manual approval in order to approve this model. So now what happens, if I approve this model, it will go and deploy my model to dev environment. Okay, I'm also going to show you how to deploy this model to production only if you stay till end of the session. So now in order to approve this model, all I'm going to do, I'm going to say update status. Here I'm going to change my status from pending to approve. Yeah, then I'm going to say update status. As simple as that. So now you can see that I'm approving my model to be deployed to dev environment, otherwise a staging environment. So now how do I track it? How do I check whether my model is deployed or not? I will go to something called endpoints, and after a few minutes you could able to see my endpoint start deploying. So it will take few minutes, we'll come back to it, and now we'll move on to the next interesting aspect, talking about the third very important aspect, talking about MLOps job industries. How does it looks like? So MLOps, who should learn MLOps? Who should be part of this MLOps journey, right? Who should be part of MLOps? Who should learn MLOps specialization program, MLOps specialization course that I'm talking about? Anyone who is part of building ML projects, any stakeholders who are part of it. It may be data engineers, it may be data scientists, or maybe data analyst, it may be research or maybe applied scientist. Are you an ML engineer? Are you a DevOps engineer who is part of ML model building process? Are you an aspiring MLOps professional and an enthusiast? Or maybe machine learning professional who want to learn how to deploy their models to production ready environment? Otherwise, any person who want to learn how to use Dockers and Kubernetes to deploy your ML model, to build your ML model, are using AWS, Azure, GCP for building your ML model, or someone who is interested to learn data version control tools, feature stores, or ML flow, you're the person. Or any individual who is part of or interested in data and AI industry, you are the right person to get started. Okay, saying that, let's get into the very important aspect here. So you might be a data engineer, a data scientist, or ML engineer, right? So what happens, like how does your career looks like, let's say once you're upgrading your skills on top of MLOps? So this is the data that we got from doing a lot of research. And again, so this is a data from, let's say, Glassdoor, for which represents an average salary for ML engineers, MLOps engineers, if you are part of US, for example. So US is really huge, obviously, which start from $94,520. I mean, $1,000 per year, right? That's really huge. Like, now let's try to understand, so what does the salary range looks like, an average salary range looks like if you are in India. So this is the data that we got from sixfigure.com. It's open, you can just go and check it. This data has been generated after verifying 12 profiles. An average salary for someone who has MLOps skills on their resume is going to start from 23.1 lakhs. Okay, and again, it depends on your experience, and again, this is an average salary. What I'm talking about, if you have somewhere around, let's say, 2 or 3 years of experience, for example. So if your experience is more, and it goes on, let's say there are 33% of people who lies between 10 to 20 lakhs, 42% lies between 20 to 30 lakhs, and 25% of people lies between 30 to 40 lakhs. That varies, depends on your experience. So we understand we are in almost in a boom of let's say AI and ML, what's happening in outside in an organization. And again, so if you talk about what's the recession proof career, definitely it's going to be having your skills on let's say ML and AI. So definitely we understand every data engineers today, they know how to build data engineering pipelines, prepare and transform data. We understand every data scientist today they have a skill set to, let's say, come up with the best ML model, picking up a right algorithm, right? So how do you make your career even more recession proof? Definitely having your MLOps skill set. So we understand that the actual trend of jobs in ML started picking up in 2019, and it started again picking up till 2023, right? So saying that, so now we will get started with our actual stuff. So whatever happens here, the amount of the speed, the innovation happens. For example, I could able to explain it in one beautiful slide here, right? So just imagine what happened between 2009 to 2019, just in 10 years, the amount of transformation that happened, the speed of transformation, right? Just imagine the old times, right, where cameramen and pilots are going together to shoot a movie, maybe a news reporters, right? Amount of struggles they go into just to shot a picture, right, or maybe a video. So this particular industry completely been transformed when the drones comes to the picture, right? That's the amount of transformation, that's the speed that it actually goes on right now. Okay, so this is where we're going to talk about how you can able to become a specialist, how you can able to sit on top of an industry, right? So talking about MLOps specialization program, MLOps specialization course. So this particular course is actually starting from April 15th, that is from April 15th, every Saturday and Sunday. It's going to be for 7 weekends. That means every Saturday and Sunday we're going to have a session. Let me just explain the workflow. So let's say if you're going to join from India, your time zone is going to be 7 p.m. to 11 p.m. That means every 4 hours on Saturday and 4 hours on Sunday. So if you're going to join from EST time zone, it's going to be 9:30 a.m. to 1:30 p.m. Let's say if you're from CST, it's going to be 3:30 to 7:30. So let me just explain the workflow, how it's going to work. So As I mentioned, every weekend we're going to have a live hands-on session. As I mentioned, it's not okay, you're going to come and listen to my lecturer. No, it's not. It's not how it's going to work. So it's going to be live hands-on session. So let's say there are 5 real-time projects. We'll talk about that one in detail. So every project that I'm going to build on top of my screen, you'll be literally replicating on your screen. That's how it's going to work. Okay. So every weekend you're going to attend a live session, and every Monday you're going to receive an access to that recordings. And every Tuesday or Wednesday or maybe depends on a participant's convenience, we'll be conducting a debugging session. So debugging session is nothing but, so let's say based on what you have learned in live sessions, you might have some bugs, you're practicing something, you're building some new projects, you're stuck somewhere, you need to ask some questions, you have some other questions. Okay, so you can able to join a debugging session. So we'll be helping one-on-one every participants to resolve your doubts. So how does this course structure looks like? What is the curriculum? We will talk about that one in detail right now. Okay, so now let's get started. So here is the MLOps specialization course, the key features. It's a 60 hours program, as I mentioned, 7 weekends. There are 50 plus live hands-on labs and 5 real-time projects that we're going to build. At least 1 project on every cloud and 1 project on every open source tool that we're going to talk about, and one-on-one debugging session. And more important aspect, it's not just about one single cloud, 3 different cloud platforms and open source tool sets. Okay, saying that, so now we will be getting into the actual curriculum. How does the curriculum looks like? Okay, let's get into that. So we have an interesting curriculum. It's going to be really fun to know. So let me just quickly open a curriculum. I will also share you that particular curriculum where you can download the PDF, all this stuff in a few minutes. So stay till end of the session. So because still I have showed you how to deploy my model to dev environment. Still we need to generate a predictions out of it, and also the place where you can able to download a free ebooks. Okay, stay till end of the session. So I'm going to share you all the details. Okay, saying that, here is the curriculum. So I'm going to share this information, I mean a PDF in a chat window in a few minutes. You can able to download. Let's get started. We'll start from the curriculum informations. There are 13 modules, 13 modules. Let's say our first module will be obviously MLOps introduction. So this is where we'll be deep dive into the various scenarios that we need to discuss in terms of MLOps, talking about what is really MLOps and what are the real challenges for every industry in MLOps, talking about the high level motivation, considering and discussing about the various different components of MLOps, understanding the life cycles. And this is where we're going to talk about, okay, so what is this DevOps and what is this AI ops and what is this model ops, what is this GitOps, right? All those aspects. And talking about the CI/CD production case studies, understanding, okay, so understanding how does other industries, how does industries, let's say build, let's say the CI/CD ML pipelines on Azure, GCP, and maybe open source tools, those case studies. Then comes module 2, introduction to ML and MLOps stages. This is where we go into deep dive into the, let's say, details of what are the various version controls that we're going to do, what are the various testings that we do on top of MLOps, various CI/CD pipelines, the techniques that you can able to use, reproducibility techniques, deployment and monitoring techniques. So then comes MLOps architectures. Okay, this is where we're going to talk about how does it look if you're going to design open source architecture. How does it looks like if you're going to use cloud native tools to design that architecture. We're going to talk about tools like Kubeflow, MLflow, Metaflow, Kedro, ZenML, or MLrun, or CML. Otherwise, talking about architectures on top of AWS and GCP, maybe Azure. So then comes talking about various different tools that are available in the market. So I mean, this particular curriculum is set in a particular way because it's a specialist level program. So there are 2 kind of categories of roles that we could able to define that you can able to apply after completing these courses. One is, let's say you might be an existing data engineer, data scientist, ML engineer, where you're upgrading your skills to MLOps, and you'll be working with an organization where they have already picked a tool for you. Let's say they might be using MLflow. You're going to gain a knowledge how to use MLflow. So you might be the one in that category. Otherwise, you can also apply for the roles like MLOps lead engineer, otherwise MLOps specialist, MLOps architect. So these are the people who will be someone who is architecting the pipeline, designing what organization has to use, considering in the perspective of cost optimization, the scalability perspective. So they will be designing a pipeline. So I mean, obviously, when it comes to MLOps specialist, lead engineer, you're going to have you need to have a more experience comparing with, let's say, the basic experience that you need for data engineer or maybe data science. Okay, so the next module would be the module 3. This is where we're going to talk about the Git. As I mentioned, So this is where we're going to learn how to use Git. Once you learn how to use Git, you can able to use Git-based repositories everywhere, AWS, Azure, GCP, Open Source. Then comes introduction to CI/CD. So it doesn't make sense without you understanding how DevOps works, how CI/CD pipelines work, to learn MLOps. So we're going to learn DevOps on top of every cloud, and we're going to build hands-on projects on every cloud. So once you get this curriculum, so wherever we mention hands-on, that means there are some hands-on labs projects that we're going to build. So as I mentioned, there are DevOps projects that we're going to build on every different cloud: AWS, Azure, GCP. Then comes module number 5, Dockers and Kubernetes. So all these modules, what I'm talking about, so we're going to get started from the basics. I mean, Dockers and Kubernetes, for example. So let's say you're going to talk about what is Dockers, how to install Dockers, how to build an image, right? How to use, let's say, Kubernetes, right? Those stuff. We're going to build a project like how to deploy your ML model on top of Docker container, and how to deploy your model on Kubernetes cluster, for example. Then comes module number 6, deployment, Kubernetes deployment strategies on top of the cloud platform. So we're going to also build how to deploy your ML models on top of a Kubernetes cluster running on top of a cloud platform. Then comes introduction to model management, the module number 7. Here we're going to dive deep into, let's say, the model management tools for data versioning, code versioning, experiment tracking, model registries, monitoring. So this is where we're going to talk about ML flow. We're going to dive deep into that. We're going to build 2 projects, how to deploy your ML flow stack. Then comes building, training, and deploying your ML model through ML flow. Then comes DVC, using DVC to to version your data, right? So then comes Git large files for versioning your data. Then comes module number 8, feature store, understanding what is feature store and how to build a feature store, how to use SageMaker feature store, it may be Vertex AI GCP based feature store, or maybe Databricks feature store, or Tecton, a Feast, for example, which is open source feature store, or maybe HubSpot. So here we're going to build our own feature store by using Feast, where we're going to build both online or offline feature store. Then comes Cloud Service 101. This is where it makes more interesting. So this is where we're going to build end-to-end pipelines on top of cloud platforms. At least one project on every cloud, building end-to-end pipelines on top of SageMaker Studio, using Vertex AI to build end-to-end pipelines, using Azure Machine Learning Studios to build end-to-end ML pipelines. More specifically, here we're going to use MLOps version 2 on top of Azure. Then comes Kubeflow. Okay, that's good. Okay, my organization is not using AWS, Azure, GCP. Maybe they're using Kubeflow, which is open source, for example. How to use Kubeflow, how to deploy Kubeflow on top of Kubernetes cluster, right? How do we build pipelines on top of Kubeflow is being covered. The project. Then comes module number 11, model monitoring, the very important aspect. This is where we're going to learn how to monitor your ML models on all these different cloud platforms, how to use SDKs that has been provided. Not only that, building projects on top of it. Then comes introduction to auto ML tools, understanding various different auto ML tools, and we'll be also providing a demo on top of it. Then comes post deployment challenges, the final module. This is where we're going to talk about what are the challenges after deployment of your pipelines and your models. What are the challenges related to ML? What are the challenges related to software engineering? How to use open source tool set like Evidently to monitor your ML model, right? Those projects will be built. So this is the robust pipeline, which is inclusive of, let's say, 13 modules, and the skills that you're going to master in this particular program, and the exact tools that we're going to learn in this program has been mentioned in this particular PDF. You can able to check those details once I share in detail. Okay, saying that, we will discuss more and we'll get back to the AWS. Let's see what happened there. We are deploying our ML model, right? Okay, here we go. We are back again. Obviously, I'm going to discuss about the pricing and other aspects in a few more minutes. Okay, because still we have almost 25 to 25 minutes. Okay, so here we go. Okay, here we go. So here you can see there is something. Under endpoints, you can see my model has been already deployed. The name of a stage is, it's staging. Basically, we can say it's a development environment, and status says in service. That means my model has been deployed in a real time. So now I will show you how to generate a predictions out of it. So now I will open my model, and this is my name of my endpoint. So demo session 2 staging. So now I have deployed my model to dev environment. Now I want to validate whether this model is working perfectly fine, whether it could able to generate predictions. So here I have my Jupyter notebooks. I can able to use this notebook code, a simple script, to invoke my ML model to generate predictions. As I mentioned, here we are working on abalone based data set to predict an age of an abalone. Based on an age, the different pricings has been offered for these farmers in the market. So now here's my test data set. I'm going to simply hit run. It's going to predict the age of my abalone. It says 8.68. That's an age of my abalone. So this predictions is being generated from a development environment, the model that I deployed to dev environment. Okay, I'm going to show you how to deploy my model to production environment in a few more minutes. So now let's try to discuss about what does the pricing looks like, right? How do you register, right? What are the things? Okay, so now let's get started. So we will discuss about what is the pricing structure for this program. For a reason, we have splitted our prices into 3 different plans. The reason is pretty much simple. We don't want to feed something that is not necessary for you. So you can able to be more convenient in how you can able to pick it. So we have 3 different plans. The actual fee for this program for advanced plus plan starts with 39,999, and then we have advanced plan which starts from 34,999. Then we have basic plan starts with 32,999 only. Okay, what is this? Okay, so you have 3 different plans. What is this? Why do you have 3 different plans? How does it make a difference, right? So let me just provide you. Irrespective of what are the plan that you pick, whether you pick basic or maybe advanced or maybe advanced plus, doesn't matter. Okay, so equal opportunity is being given for every participant, whatever the plan that you pick. So equal opportunity is being given for, let's say, attending a live session, accessing recordings, attending a debugging session in all the plans. That doesn't matter. Then what's the difference? So there are additional features that's been provided for the people who are registering for advanced or maybe advanced plus plan. Okay, so for example, so it may be starting from, let's say, resume preparation. Along with that, you can able to see here we have a 6 months of premium job support feature has been offered for advanced plan. What is this advanced? I mean, what is this job support? So for example, let's say once after completing this program, definitely you'll be in a specialist where you can able to work with any different organization. But even though, let's say you have some virtual mentor from Cyton Technologies supporting you, let's say helping you in fixing the bugs, providing you some consulting, right? Or maybe teaching some best practices for you, right? So just consider that in your organization, they might be asking you to build a sample pipeline or maybe a feature store for you to get started, right? So definitely you'll be having knowledge to get started, but what if you can able to get some suggestions from us before you're getting started, for example. As part of job support, we cannot build a project behalf of you, we cannot code for you, but yeah, we can be a mentor for you to get started, and this is our premium support. Then comes bonus reattendance opportunity. This particular feature definitely helps working professionals. Let me tell you what. So bonus reattendance opportunity is nothing but, let's say our session is going to start from 15th of April. That's our current batch. I mean, you will be given a 2 opportunities. I mean, you can able to take this course twice. Let me repeat, you can take this course twice. What do you mean by that? You can attend our current batch. After completing the current batch, you can also attend the next batch also, which might happen in June, for example. What is the opportunity in this? So maybe, let's say 99.9% of people who are attending these courses will be, let's say, working professionals, and there are chances you might miss 1 or 2 sessions. So you can retake these live sessions again and again. Let's say there's another scenario. Maybe in the next batch, for example, we might be upgrading our skill levels. There are a lot of changes that we do considering what's happening right now, comparing with the previous batch, for example. So there's an opportunity for you to retake this course again with a new, maybe modified syllabus, for example. Okay, then comes advanced plus plan. So here, instead of you getting 6 months of job support, you get 1 year of job support. And again, this would be an inclusive of bonus reattendance. You can take this course twice. Then comes instant access feature. What is this instant access feature? So today is 25th. Still, we have around 20 days to go, right? Around 20 to 25 days to go for our live session, which is going to start from 15th of April, right? So what happens? Instant access is nothing but, let's say if you're completing a registration today, let's say you're going to get an instant access to the recordings of our previous batch, which we have just done with February. I mean, we are just done with March first weekend. So you can able to get started with the recordings. And once 15th comes into the picture, you can get started with the live sessions. That's how it works. Okay, these are the 3 important features that we are offering. And again, usually working professionals either take advanced or advanced plus. It doesn't matter, you can able to decide accordingly. Let's say if you are looking for a price in USD, let's say an advanced plus plan starts with 599. Let's say then we have advanced plan starts with 499. Then we have a basic plan starts with $449. Again, the same features being offered. Again, it won't be a fun, right, without providing any offers for you, right? So people who do specifically attend our demo session, they have a surprise for you. Along with stay till end of the session, there is a still demo has to be provided, and you can also download free ebooks. Along with that, you can also take over the surprise along with you. Okay, so let me tell you how you can able to cut down your cost on your registrations. Okay, here how it works. We have this offer till 27th of March. I mean, who are the participants who are going to register by next Monday, that is 27th of March, they can climb this particular offer. What is this offer? Let's say, for example, you want to register for advanced plan. For example, you are interested in advanced plan, correct? Let's say, for example, you might be interested in advanced plan, otherwise you might be interested in advanced plus plan. Okay, so let's say if you're interested in advanced plan, you don't want to register for advanced plan. All you need to do, register for a basic plan. What do you mean by that? Let's say if you register for a basic plan, you'll get a free upgrade, a complete free upgrade. If you just register for basic plan, you get complete free upgrade where we will be upgrading you to advanced plan completely. Yes, that's offered, and that is still only till 27th of March, and this is only for the first 10 registrations only, strictly 10 registrations. Maybe you're interested in advanced plus plan, right? Maybe you are interested in getting, let's say, oh, I'm sorry. So let's say you might be interested in getting, let's say, 1 year of job support. You want to get started with instant access of this course. So in that way, all you need to do, register for, let's say, here we go. So register for advanced plan. If you register for advanced plan, where you get the free access, I mean, the complete free upgrade to advanced plus plan. By paying for advanced plan, you get advanced plus. So where you save around $5,000 over there, right? So that's the offer that we have. This is only till, let's say, 27th of March. Okay, saying that, so I will be opening, definitely I will be opening this session for Q&A where you can ask a lot of questions. And why Cytron technology specifically? Why should you care about this particular training, right? So, and again, we are not new for this particular industry. We've been there for a couple of months already, sorry, a couple of years. So, and again, we've been represented ourselves, been incubated and supported by Government of India, Department of Science and Technology, been incubated in PhD step, and we've been represented in many international stages, got many different awards starting from a startup. Then we have been part of AWS Activate program. And again, it's not our first batch that we're conducting. You can also check our a glimpse of happy students feedback. So this feedback has been already attached in a PDF. You can able to decide accordingly. I will be a trainer anyway. Okay, so it's going to be fun learning. So you can also check out our the participants, how they feel, how they provide a star rating from 1 to 5. You can also check out the details in our PDF that we're going to share. You can also check out our website for the more information and some of the glimpses from our offline course. But this is anyway online, but this is our pictures from our offline sessions. Okay, saying that, so now I will show you how to deploy our models to, let's say, production. Then I will be opening a session for Q&A. Then you can ask me a truckload of questions. I will be here to answer you. Okay, so now I will show you how to deploy this model to production. If you want to deploy your model to production, so we're going to use a CI/CD tool on top of AWS, as I mentioned. So the CI/CD tool that we're going to use, it's code pipeline. So here you can see I have a pipeline that I built, and here we go. So this sounds like exactly like an architecture that I showed you. So here is our code commit, which is a source code repository. Then we have a build phase. And here we have a deployment phase, which is actually waiting for my approval. So now, if I want to approve this model to be deployed to the production, let's consider that I am the person who is responsible for approving. I'm simply going to hit review. I'm going to simply say approve. By doing this, you can see my model is getting ready to be deployed to the production ready environment. Now you can see my status has been updated. So now it says that it's being deployed to production. You can check the status by going back to SageMaker Studio itself. Maybe after a few minutes, you could able to see that, okay, here we go. You can see the status has been changed. It says that deploying your ML model to production, it's created. So it's going to take again a few minutes to be deployed. We will come back again to generate predictions out of it. Now let me open the session for Q&A. Before sharing the session for Q&A, I'm going to share your links where you can able to register and download a free ebooks and other information. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to share the 3 important links in your chat window. The first link is for registration. The second link is where you can able to download the PDF, the curriculum. And the third link is for downloading the free ebooks as I promised. And here is our contact information. If you want to talk to me, this is my number, the first number. You can able to talk to me as a trainer. Yeah. So now I'm going to share this links in the chat window. Here we go. I have shared it. Just check, maybe copy that, put it in maybe in your Word document, or maybe if you have joining in a mobile, just copy it and put it somewhere you can able to use it. So let me just show you. Once you click on that registration link, you'll be redirected to a platform called Townscript. This is where we have hosted our payment gateway, so you can able to check the complete details here. So whatever the curriculum that I'm talking about, the poster, you can check our program curriculum in detail over here itself. Yeah, every information is being mentioned. Yeah, all of the details. Let's say if you want to book a seat, you can simply hit book now, and you can able to pick the seat that you're interested in. So there are 2 categories here, one for Indian participants, basic, advanced, or advanced plus. Let's say if you're joining from outside India, an international participant, basic for international, advanced for international, advanced plus for international. You can able to pick the seat. And let's say all you need to do, if you're looking for advanced plan, just register for advanced plan, and we will be doing an upgrade to advanced plus. If you're looking for basic, so if you're looking for advanced plan, register for basic, where we will be upgrading you to advanced plan completely for free. So, and as I mentioned, you can also check out our PDF where we have mentioned the same pricing informations, the features for USD and you can also check FAQs, and again the same feedbacks from customers, the participants again. Yeah, saying that now, yeah, the session is officially open for Q&A. You can ask your questions. If you can also mention your questions in the chat window. Otherwise, if you want to talk to me, you can unmute your mic, you can mention your name and what you do, and you can mention your question actually. Go ahead.
Hi, Sarat.
Hello. Yeah, may I know your name and what you do?
Yeah, my name is Salem. I'm connecting from the US. I'll start out by saying it was a great session. I really enjoyed the demo. And having said
Awesome.
that, I want to I need some clarification. You mentioned
Go ahead.
because my time zone is CST. So what time does CST start? Do you say it's 3:30 p.m.?
Yep.
All right. I just wanted to be sure.
3:30 to 7:30. Yes, exactly. I guess it'd be more comfortable. Yes. Yeah. Okay.
All right.
Awesome.
Oh, would have been
Awesome.
asked? Yeah. So I'm currently working, but I'm working as an international student with a consulting firm, and
Okay.
I'm working. I don't have background in machine learning, but I've been doing a lot of. I'm learning all those on my own. And so
Okay.
you mentioned something because I want to subscribe for Advanced Plus. That means I'm going to, if I register between now and 20 and Monday, that means I'm going to pay for just Advanced. So
Advanced. Yes.
yeah, I want to understand. Do you say that if I register by Monday, I'm going to have access to instant access to ongoing sessions?
Exactly. Exactly. Yes. So we have a deadline till Monday. It is 27th. If you register for, let's say, advanced plan by till Monday, you get access to Advanced Plus, because Advanced Plus an feature like instance access. So you'll be immediately sharing an access to the previous batch recordings. You can able to get started. And once 15th of April comes into the picture, you can get started with the live sessions.
All right.
Yeah.
That is clear. Another question. So you talked about that package coming with 1 year job support. So job support, I want to know if my understanding of it correct. Does that mean that, let's say in my place, I'm given a task and I have some bugs,
Yeah.
let's say I'm working on it, the job support, does it mean I can contact you and you will step in to assist me?
Yeah, we cannot do that because again, you'll be working for a corporate and you'll be having your NDAs signed. So obviously we cannot take your data because data costs billions, right? So let's say, for example, all we are working here, maybe you'll be working on top of Azure, AWS, or GCP, or maybe open source tools. So we'll be, let's say, provide an alternative example. Let's say, for example,
Do you have the
let's say you're
lunch
trying
on
to,
that?
yeah. So let's say you're trying to
Lunch?
build a
Do you
feature
have the
server
live?
on top of, sorry, folks,
Then
please.
ನಾನು ಇದರ ಎಲ್ಲ
Okay, I'm just muting it. Okay, so let's say you're asking, organization is asking to build a feature store, maybe on a feast, for example. Maybe consider that you want to use offer online feature store. You want to use, let's say, Redshift on AWS. Maybe you want to use BigQuery on GCP, right? So maybe that would be the scenario. Maybe let's say your organization is asking you to use Redshift, right? So maybe you want to need some documentation to get started, some best practices, all those stuff, right? So maybe you cannot share your data, but we'll be sharing you and the sample use case, the case study, how you can able to get started, and maybe if you have some bugs, what you need to do in order to fix it, right? So, but as I mentioned, as part of job support, we cannot make a project behalf of you end to end. We cannot code for you behalf of you, but definitely we can help you to help you debug the things and fix the things and make, I mean, basically to push you further, right? In case if you're stuck. Yeah.
All right, my last question. Sorry that I'm asking too many questions. My
Oh, it's
last
okay. Go
question.
ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, my last question,
Folks,
you
I'm going
said,
to answer others' questions also. Please stay. Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. Yeah.
so my last question is, you said the bonus of reattendance. So how does that work? Does that happen automatically, or because I'm really interested in that?
Sorry, can you repeat your question once again?
So the package or the benefit that comes with Advanced Plus is bonus of reattendance
Yeah, yeah,
opportunity.
yeah. Yes. So, I mean, let's say, even though if you're registering an advanced or maybe advanced plan, you get this bonus reattendance opportunity. So whoever who have a ticket for advanced or maybe advanced plus plan, so they will be given an access to attend our the next batch also. After, let's say, once we are done with batch from 15th, you will be getting an opportunity to attend the next batch, which might happen in June, for example. Yes. So this will happen automatically. So because you will be connected with our groups, we'll be updating you once we have launched our next batch. So you'll be automatically joined for that particular groups. Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I guess that answered your question. Yeah, thank you so much.
Yes, you answered my
Yeah. So
questions.
now let me just answer a few questions in a chat window. In the meantime, if anyone else has a question, please, you can unmute your mic. You can able to talk to me. Okay, I'm going to answer this question from Mayank. Azure pipelines, do we need to learn ML script? Okay, that's a good question. So Mayank, so like we're going to learn in both the ways. So we're going to use, let's say, both UI. I mean, without using ML scripts, you can able to get started with, let's say, through UI itself manually. Otherwise, you can also provide your ML scripts to provide it, right? And again, ML is not so much, let's say, complicated like what you learn on Python or maybe String. So like every ML script has some standard way of getting it, the standard way of defining the components through that. So definitely those things will be defining it here. And again, if you have some idea of what is ML file, that would be more than sufficient for you to get started. So you don't want to be an expert here. So again, even though, let's say, so for example, DevOps peoples, I would like to answer another question. So because let's say here, so for example, DevOps person might be having a question saying that, okay, here do I need to learn Python programming? Do I need to understand algorithms, all this stuff? Not exactly, because as a DevOps person, you're not transforming yourself into data scientist jobs or data engineering job. So no, basically as a DevOps person, you'll become an ML engineer. So you'll be responsible for, let's say, creating, let's say, and handling CI/CD pipelines, like building this ML scripts, for example, handling, let's say, handling model registries, getting a right version of a model, deploying it, those kind of stuff. You won't be transforming into data science. You don't need to have any knowledge on, let's say, understanding, I mean, having expertise level idea on what is algorithms, how to train a model. But anyway, as MLOps, because it's the communication and collaboration between a team, as a DevOps person, you need to have an ideology how model training happens, because that's what exactly you're going to learn here in this program anyway, right? So you don't want to become a data scientist, but you need to understand what is exactly ML model is, what is model registry is, what is model accuracy is, all those stuff. That definitely going to learn from this program. Yeah. Okay, so then we have a Gaurav. Any level of mastery required, other skills? Yeah, as I mentioned, I guess the previous answer did answer you. I mean, let's say if you are a data engineer, your existing data engineer skills definitely that enough to get started. If you're a data scientist, perfect, you can get started. Otherwise, let's say if you are a beginner, like let's say for example, you are already a beginner in ML model, but you understand where you've been placed. Do you have a knowledge on data science? Okay, you're good at, okay, not expert, but let's say you're good at building an ML model, understanding how algorithm works, model training works, what is hyperparameter tuning. pretty much good. You can able to get started with this program. Yes, folks, go ahead and answer your, like unmute your mic if you want to talk to me. Okay, so we have Malik asked the question. I have completed AWS DevOps course, but not started working. Can I straight away go for MLOps without DevOps real-time experience? I mean, yeah, that doesn't matter because DevOps and MLOps are pretty much as part of where you work completely different, right? Because DevOps usually will be working on a software industries where they need software development lifecycle. Maybe if you want to work with the clients on a banking, blah blah blah. So like maybe e-commerce, wherever you are, where our software application comes into the picture, right? But MLOps is all about machine learning here. Definitely yes. I mean, so I would like to differentiate this in such a way. Let's say as a DevOps person, you want to shift it to MLOps. It doesn't mean that you need to have some DevOps job experience already. So let's say if you're good at, let's say MLOps, especially what I'm talking about in the perspective of ML engineering, so definitely works. So a bare software engineer can able to transform to ML engineer. Not talking about data scientist or maybe data engineer. ML engineer is someone who is nothing but DevOps people's operations teams will be part of it. Like a bare software engineer who has a front and back end experience, they can able to get started with MLOps directly. Because here, as this program, as I mentioned, we are also covering DevOps tools, right? What I'm talking about in a module, especially in if you go to curriculum, especially in module 4, you can see this is where we understand and we build project and understand how DevOps tools work here, right? Yeah. So, and Majid, sorry if I'm pronouncing your names wrong. So Masjid asked a question, when is our new batch is starting? From April 15th. April 15th. As I mentioned, if you want to get started immediately, let's say if you want instance access, you can get advanced plus plan by registering for advanced. You get instance access to the recordings. You can watch recordings, you can join, you can rejoin our 15 live sessions again. Okay, Sumit asked another question. For lab sessions, access cloud will be provided. Okay, that's a good question. So when it comes to, let's say we're going to do a lot of hands-on on both cloud on your own PCs also. We won't be providing an access to this cloud platforms because every cloud platforms comes with a free trial, right? So we will be asking our participants to create your own free trial accounts on AWS, Azure, and GCP. So that would be more than enough for us to start experimenting and learning things on top of it. So yeah, so you'll be creating your own accounts actually. So Masjid. Okay, so then ask the question. So the one after that, the starts the next month. Okay, I didn't get that question. I'm sorry. Okay, Amit asked
this side. I have.
Yeah, sorry, like just give me a second. I will just answer this question. I will come back to you. Sorry. Okay, can you repost the details again as I rejoin the session? Okay, Amit, I'm going to share this registration details once again. The first link is for registration. The second link is for downloading a curriculum. The third link is for downloading ebooks. And below is my contact information. Yeah, please go ahead. I guess someone is talking. Yep.
Yeah. So, hi, Pradeep this side. So, I have one question regarding the AWS thing. So, you mentioned that we do a end-to-end
Go
project
ahead.
deployment and all through the AS.
Yep.
So, as per my knowledge, SageMaker Studio don't have the access on the free account. So, how can we able to do that in real time?
No, not exactly like that. So, okay, that's a good question. If you see, it's not about the studio. Basically, what happens, SageMaker Studio is part of SageMaker, right? It's not
Yeah.
different. So, SageMaker Studio is part of SageMaker. And here, creating a studio doesn't cost you. That only thing that we need to be aware here is about the instances that we're using. That's the cost, right? So for example, instances, I mean the kind of a CPU or maybe the GPU that you need, right? So here, AWS does provide few instances for you for notebooks, for training, and for deployment. So there are instances where you can able to use it part of Studio, which will not cost you, which will be part of, let's say, free trial. Okay, so I guess that will help you. And again, even though for a worst case scenario, there is a trick AWS can able to help us. I mean, not as an organization, let's say as a student, as a individual person that you're learning something on part of AWS. So AWS can able to help us. Unfortunately, in case if there is any bills that's being generated, because we believe that we are using free trial, so that we can able to ask AWS to waive off this bill for one shot. I mean, they don't waive off you any time that you get bill for one shot. That's an again AWS does helps us. I mean, unfortunately, in case if we are going out of the free trial, yeah, I guess that helped you. Yeah.
Uh, y- yeah, that's helpful. But one thing, right? So SageMaker is a like tool through which we can do everything to create a
Yep.
pipeline to one sort. Then we can
Yes.
build a like it's automatically have
Yes.
the feature store. Then monitoring, it's have monitoring tool as well. And apart from that, using the open source tool, we can also create like pipeline with using the EC2 instance and using any cloud as well, right? So what part
Exactly.
we cover in this? So what
Okay. So for
part we
example,
going to?
yeah. So as part of open source, as I mentioned, okay, we can say there's a lot of tools that we did mention here. Let's say we can talk about Dockers and Kubernetes. On top of Dockers and Kubernetes, talking about let's say using Kubeflow. If
Yeah.
you check the Kubeflow, again, it's an open source platform where you can able to
Yes.
create end-to-end pipelines. Otherwise, let's say if you want to go for a simple workflow on top of ML flow, you can also use ML flow to build end-to-end pipelines, for example. Yeah. And you can also check the relevant tools that you can also use. Like say maybe alternatively, maybe not every organization, maybe let's say for example, I don't want to use CI/CD pipelines on top of a cloud. For example, you don't want to use AWS code pipeline, maybe Azure pipelines. Maybe you want to use Jenkins. Yeah. So for example, when you talk about SageMaker comes with integration with Jenkins, right? So there are such other open source tools. Yeah. Okay. So let me just go to
Yeah.
the next
Sorry to
question that I can answer. Yeah. Please go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry to asking you so lot of question. So just last question I have. So we
Yeah, go
use
ahead.
both like SageMaker plus like open source tool, right?
Yes, definitely. Yes, yes. So whatever we have mentioned in the curriculum, definitely those things will be covered. You can check out the curriculum in detail, and if you have any questions, yeah, please let me know. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for the plan.
Okay. Okay. So then we have another questions from Drew. Okay, so we have a student. Okay, so since I'm a student, I'm feeling very less experienced with ML models, handling real-time industry data and data engineering. So it is possible if I learn MLOps, I can get a job, or I should be spend more time after graduating, getting experience before. Okay, so that's a good question. So Drew, so you need to understand here, because let's say there are various different roles. I mean, generally I'm talking for many different peoples here. So let's say you might be a data engineer. I mean, there are data engineering skills roles that are available in the industry. There are data science skills. There are ML engineering skills. And those stuff, right? For example, so you need to see, because let's say there are roles in an organizations where they call it as full stack, right? When the word comes full stack, you would be the one who will be doing everything. Let's say, for example, full stack data scientists, ML engineers. So you'll be the one preparing a data, transforming it, training it, producing a best quality of a model, deploying it, even though maybe if needed, building a pipelines. Okay, so if you are someone who is going to apply for full stack, then yeah, you need to have knowledge of data engineering. Okay, let's say data science and ML engineering also, right? You see, you need to decide through where you want to focus. Let's say if you want to be pure ML engineer, yes, you can good to go. You can be ML engineering itself. So let's say ML engineers, let's say we'll be talking about the CI/CD pipelines, understanding model registry, working closely with data scientists, model monitoring tools, such kind of a stuff. Let's say when it comes to a data scientist, will be so much good at algorithms, picking up a right algorithm that could be able to solve the problem, hyperparameter tuning jobs, producing the well quality of a model, understanding model registries, understanding model monitoring tools, understanding feature stores are important, right? Maybe data engineers, for example, if you want to provide a glimpse, understanding how to bring a data, building data engineering pipelines, understanding using data version control tools, right, to version their data, using code repositories, version control tools. Those would be very much important, for example, right? So you focus where you want to be, because maybe like focusing on all this aspect, becoming data engineer and ML data scientist, I'm an ML engineer. If you feel that difficult, try to be focus on one thing. try to be a data scientist, or try to be MLOps engineer. I mean, ML engineer by learn ML engineer. So that adds a value. And again, so and one reality today, considering what we discussed, the current state of machine learning. So the current state of machine learning, what we discussed, right? So there might be a new hirings. There might be a new data engineers or data scientists, ML engineers being hired. So definitely they cannot escape without talking about MLOps, talking about deployment, monitoring, versioning, all those stuff, right? That is mandate today because so there are data engineers and data scientists. They're really good at data engineering and building ML models. All they need industries today, according to this data, productionizing their models. I mean, to become that as an AI product at the end of the day, where they need a solid ML pipelines. Okay. Saying that, let me know if there is any other questions. I'm just reading all your questions in a chat. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute your mic. You can talk to me. Okay, so Nil. Okay, the person called Nil. What about open source tools? How to install and what are the requirements? Okay, so you don't have to worry about the prerequisites that you need to fulfill, like installing softwares, all those stuff. So there is a separate sessions through the sessions, through debugging sessions, and maybe through documentations at least 1 week before, or maybe 3 or 4 days before the session. We'll be providing all the prerequisites that you need to fulfill before you joining the session. You don't have to worry about that. Okay, so then we have another question. So Malik, even though if we complete this MLOps course, will be considered as a fresher in a market, in that considered market perspective? I mean, it depends on what you're doing, Malik. Right now, let's say consider that you are a fresher. Let's say you're graduated from a college, but let's say you have a data science skill set. Let's say you're learning MLOps, for example. Obviously, you will be considered as a fresher because you just graduated and learned. But let's say if you're an experienced candidate, I mean, you already have some hands-on experience. I mean, you are a data engineer, you are a data scientist, an ML engineer, and you're definitely not going to be considered as a fresher. Basically, you are upgrading yourself over here to a better salary tomorrow, right? So that's how it's going to work, right? And again, as I mentioned, let's say you have more experience, you can also look forward for the different roles. MLOps specialist, MLOps architect, MLOps lead engineer. So where you'll be someone who will be architecting the pipeline, where you will be someone who will be taking a decisions on using a right side of a tool for your organization. Yeah. Okay, so Malik asked another question: Is Python also must to have skill set for MLOps? Again, it depends. Let's say if you are a data engineer, if you are a data scientist, definitely you need to have Python skills, right? So, but when it comes to ML engineer, it depends. So ML engineers are not data scientists. I mean, they won't do data science works, right? So for example, you might be someone who will be responsible for handling CI/CD pipelines, model versioning, so deploying your model monitoring. But even though, let's say, if you are coming from this DevOps background, where you're going to transform yourself as an ML engineer, right? So, so in that perspective, as a DevOps person, we'll be doing a lot of testings, right? We'll be writing a lot of test scenarios where you'll be writing a script, right? So that level of knowledge would be more than enough. When you're working as an ML engineer, you don't need expertise level knowledge. Even though if you have a understand the logics, that's good. That's good to start actually. Okay, Pradeep asked a question: if I register today, when I will get the access, right? So as I mentioned, Pradeep, let's say if you're registering for, okay, I'm sorry. So let's say if you're registering for, let's say if you're looking forward for advanced plus plan, let's say you will be registering for advanced plan, right? Let's say if you're registering for advanced plan, then you will be getting an instance access, right? So you will be receiving an access within 24 hours. You'll be receiving an access to the instant access. Probably less than 24 hours, but worst case scenario, we are saying 24 hours. You'll be receiving access to the recordings. So Masjid asked a question: when will a new cohort after 1 month will start? I mean, as I mentioned, so we have our current batch starting from 15th of April, right? 15th of April. So if you're asking me what is the next batch after 15th, right? I mean, after 7 weekends over. So I cannot provide you a tentative dates. Okay, this is the exact date, but let's say I can able to provide you an estimate. So June, for example, right? Okay, so let me ask the next question. Okay. Okay, I guess I have read all the questions that you asked in the chat window. If you have any other questions, feel free to mention it in the chat window. Otherwise, you can unmute your mic. You can talk to me.
Oh,
Here to
can you hear
help
me?
you. Yes, I can hear you. Very
It's
much. Go
Vimal
ahead.
here. So actually, I have already have 4 years of experience, but not into like what you mentioned, DevOps data scientist. I have experience into as a recruiter. So I thought of changing career. So in that case, I started studying AWS DevOps course. So I just completed a
Okay.
DevOps course in the last 3 months. But when I jump in the market, like there are already like many people as a fresher, like as a DevOps.
Got it.
So
Got
in that
it. Got
case,
it.
I
Got it.
just thought of like upgrading myself from DevOps into MLOps. That's how I ended up DevOps. So like already considered as a fresher in DevOps. If I studied MLOps and evil, I'd be considered as a MLOps fresh. In that case, like how will I be get like picked up in the market?
Okay. Okay, I got it. So you have some work experience. I mean, you're not someone who has freshly graduated from college, but you're trying to transform your career, right? That's good. So, I mean, there are a couple of ways that you can able to deal with this. Okay. So, for example, I would like to talk about other features here, which we didn't talk. Let me just talk about these features in a few more minutes, folks. Okay. So there are many ways that you can able to represent it. So one is, let's say you have you already learning DevOps. That's perfect. Okay, that's good, right? So I mean, so the one way how you can able to demonstrate some hands-on experience on your resume, right? So for example, maybe so one way would be, let's say, attending a lot of different hackathons, for example. For example, that would be another best way. So because there are hiring hackathons specifically, okay. So there are hiring hackathons where you can able to go and participate. They might be asking you to solve some problem. So if you can able to solve this problem and there, so your experience, I mean, it's not going to be much highlighted, but yeah, so if you can able to solve this particular problem, right, where you can able to comparing with other people who are solving the problem, so which definitely adds a value. So there are high chances that you will be getting selected, right? That would be one way. So another way would be demonstrating your experiences through internships, for example, right? So maybe let's say if you can able to get into the companies, organizations where you can at least work for let's say, for example, two would be less, let's say 3 to 4 hours, means how you can able to manage it with working with that organizations. Try to add some values for their projects, especially on DevOps, right? Something like that, right? And through that you can able to gain experience. Another way would be representing yourself, building some freelancing works, right? So even though let's say if you're getting some projects outside, get it for, because you're already working as a recruiter, that's good. So you're still working, that's perfect. Get freelancing jobs, right? So get freelancing jobs, build some, I mean, get it in a low cost itself, because you're not making money over there. Get it in a as much of a low cost, see you can able to build a solution for that guy, so gain experience, right? So that would be one way. Alternative way would be building your own projects and representing, right? So building your own projects and representing yourself, otherwise build a project for someone, okay, in low cost. Otherwise, if possible, build it for free. I mean, build it for free is different, but yeah, so for a worst case scenario, you can just quote a very small amount and build it and demonstrate experience, right? So there are multiple alternative ways that you could able to represent your experience, for example. So that would be the best scenarios. Yeah. Okay, so let me know, folks, if you guys have any other questions. I'm going to spare a few more minutes so I can able to answer your questions. Okay, so let me just check if there is any other questions that I would like that I did that might have missed.
Sarat,
Hello. Yes.
yeah, I'm processing my payment now, and it looks like you guys accept um you accept what was it called? PayPal, right?
Sorry.
You accept PayPal, PayPal.
PayPal. Sorry, I didn't get it. So you mean talking about the PayPal?
Yeah, PayPal. So what I'm saying is that I'm actually doing my payment now, and
Okay, okay, yeah, there is a PayPal option. Okay, let me
yeah,
just quickly show you how it works.
yeah,
I mean, let's
it
say you
shows.
book the ticket. Yeah, so once you
Yeah,
provide your information, you should able to see a PayPal option there. Yes.
yeah, my payment is actually completed. So
Okay, that's awesome. So
uh,
once we done with this demo session, I will also share you an acknowledgement. We will receive an acknowledgement. So based on our plan, then you will be receiving features, for example. Okay. So
all
yeah,
right,
that's awesome.
thank
Awesome,
you.
that's good. Here we go. Yep. Okay. Okay, folks, let me just check if there is any other question that you would like to, you want to ask. And again, this offer is only till March, right? So we have still, if I'm not wrong, just 3 days considering today. So, and again, for 10 registrations only, even though let's say for 10 registrations is over, we will let you know based on, so we have a timestamp at what time, what people has registered. So let's say even though if the 10 registrations has been crossed, we cannot provide you this upgrade because we cannot afford this because this is a festival offer that we are providing from India. So all you need to do, just register for basic. You're going to get advanced plan. All you do, if you're looking for advanced plan, just register for advanced plan. You get advanced plus completely for free. There's a free upgrade where you get opportunity to retake these courses twice, and you get instant access to get started in next 24 hours with the recordings itself. Okay, and other features that I would like to discuss, starting from resume preparation that comes from advanced or maybe advanced plus plan. So the resume preparation is something like once you're done with this course, okay, so we will be asking you to draft your initial resume, and then we'll be providing some suggestions out of it. So let's say consider like a version control on your resume, for example. Okay, so then as part of our job updates, so we do regularly provide job updates. So based on a skill that you all learned, we have a corporate people do approach us based on the course structure that we're providing, and we have a team who just grabs the opportunity and provides updates through the community groups that you're going to connect after this session. And so let's say you can able to update apply for this jobs based on the resume that you have updated. And so we're going to track, let's say, and again, this is resume preparation and the job updates. It's a more collaboration from your side, because you will be you need to be feel free to just call us anytime and update what's going on. So maybe you might have, let's say before you updating a resume, let's say you might have applied for 10 jobs, maybe you got an interview call only from 3 organizations, so 7 been rejected. So, and once we update this resume, we're going to see and track, okay, after applying for 10 jobs, how many people are calling you, right? And let's say if 5 people called you, okay, in 5 organizations, how many rounds you could able to clear. And let's say if you're going for technical route, what went wrong over there? So let's say they might be asking some questions related to ML flow, right? Or maybe feature stores, right? What went wrong? So what you must, right? So you're going to share that feedback, because I cannot join your interview at that time. So you're going to share that feedback. So then we're going to say, okay, if there is any refresh that is needed, any revision that is needed for you to get started, right? And again, you'll be getting a lot of free ebooks. You can attend a lot of webinars that we're going to conduct even after the session, right? Or maybe the interview questions that we're going to share. So MLOps is pretty much new for any recruiter today. So this interview questions will provide you some insights how the patterns of questions is going to be, what they expect, and other more things. Yeah. So saying that, so our free upgrade offer is going to close on 27th of March. Don't miss it. If you have any questions, I'm going to spare 1 more minute. Go ahead and ask your questions. I'm going to share this links once again in the chat window. Okay, so the first link is for registration. The second link is for downloading the curriculum, the PDF, and the third link where you can download the free ebooks. And below I have a contact information of mine. You can able to contact me if you have any questions. Okay, awesome. That's it. I'm going to spare 1 more minute. Yes. Okay. So Pradeep asked a question. So whether do we have an EMI option available? Yes, we do have EMI option, Pradeep. You can also go for EMI option. You can also pick EMI option. Yep. Okay, saying that it's time, and thank you so much for providing your